Okay, good evening, everybody. I can confirm that the meeting is now live to the public and being recorded. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome members of the public, councillors and honorary aldermen to East Devon District Council's virtual council meeting on Wednesday, the 24th of February 2021. I am Councillor Cathy Gardner and your chair for the meeting. I would also like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. All participants here today are taking part remotely and the committee is being viewed online and recorded, so please bear this in mind throughout the meeting. And may I remind you to be careful with your language. May I also remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. As this meeting is dependent on internet connection and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. If we're not able to reconnect after 15 minutes, the meeting will be adjourned and reconvened at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for further details. Please make sure that all microphones are muted when you are not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Please keep your points short and do not interrupt when someone else is speaking. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic blue hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website at www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the committee by doing a roll call of all members here present. Can you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you are present, please remember to mute your microphone again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Allen.
Yes, I'm here, Susan. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Bickley.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Blakey.
Present.
Councillor Bloxham.
Present.
Councillor Bond.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Cahill.
Present.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Present.
Councillor
Present.
Chapman.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Chubb.
Present.
Councillor Coleman.
Present.
Councillor Davey.
Present.
Councillor Dent.
Present.
Councillor Faithful.
Present.
Councillor Gardner.
Present.
Councillor Gazzard.
Present. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Hall.
Present.
Councillor Hartnell.
Present.
Councillor Hawkins.
Present.
Councillor Haywood.
Present. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Hookway.
Present.
Councillor Councillor Howe.
Present.
Councillor Hughes.
Present.
Councillor Ingham. Councillor
Present.
Ingham.
Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Present, Sue, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Sue. I'm present.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Present.
Councillor Johns.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Young.
Present.
Councillor Key.
Present.
Councillor King. Councillor King.
He's struggling to get in, I think, Sue.
Okay, I'll ask him I'll come back to Councillor King. Councillor Ledger.
Present, Sue, thank you.
Councillor Loudon.
Present, Sue. Thank you.
Councillor Manley.
Present.
Councillor McCollum.
Present, Sue. Thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Present.
Councillor Moulding.
Present.
Councillor Parr.
Present.
Councillor Pepper,
Chris passes his apologies, please. He's been not well. He's just come out of hospital. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Councillor Pook,
Yeah.
Councillor Pratt,
Present. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt, okay, Councillor Ranger,
Present.
Councillor Rickson,
Present.
Councillor Rowland,
Present.
Councillor Rylands,
Present.
Councillor Skinner,
Present.
Councillor Taylor,
Present.
Councillor Thomas,
Present.
Councillor Twist,
Present.
Councillor Wibley.
Hi, Sue. I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward,
Present.
Councillor Ragg,
Present.
Councillor Chris Wright,
Present.
Councillor Tom Wright.
Present, thank you, Sue.
And can I just go back to Councillor King, who thinks just joined us?
Present. Thank you, Sue. Thank you.
Okay, over to you, Chair.
Thank you. I can confirm we're quorate today, at least a quarter of the members being in attendance. Agenda item 1 is public speaking, and there are no members of the public registered to speak. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meetings of the council on the 9th of December 2020, and the minutes of the extraordinary meetings of the council on the 13th of January and the 9th of February 2021. Firstly, on the minutes of the 9th of December 2020, if you have any comments on these minutes, please raise your hand. I don't see any hands raised on that. Can I now invite members to vote in favour or against agreeing these minutes? Please use your green ticks and red crosses.
For the benefit of those watching online, there's a vote underway at present. Chair, I've got 51 votes in favour, so that's carried, obviously.
Thank you. I can confirm these minutes are agreed. Secondly, the minutes of the 13th of January 2021. If you have any comments on the minutes of the 13th of January, can you raise your hand? I don't see any hands raised, so can we please vote in favour or against those minutes, again using the ticks and the crosses?
For those watching online, voting is underway at present. Chair, I currently have 48 votes in favour.
Thank you. I can confirm that those minutes are agreed. And finally, on the minutes of the meeting of the 9th of February 2021, if you have any comments, please raise your hands. I don't see any hands, so can we now vote please in favour or against, again using your ticks and crosses?
Voting is underway at present. Chair, I just had 54 votes in favour. Oh, it's going down. 54 votes in favour.
Thank you. I confirm these minutes are agreed. Moving on to agenda item 3, that's apologies. Can you please say who we've received apologies from? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Barrow, Councillor De Sarum and Councillor Pepper, and Honorary Aldermen Graham Godbeer, Pauline Stott and Christine Drew.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? If anyone does have one, please raise your hand and remember to unmute yourselves and advise of the type of interest and the reason. Councillor Miller.
Thanks, Chair. I do a very small amount of paid employed work for the Co-op Group, which has a store between 2 car parks. So that relates to the called minute on the Scrutiny Committee recommendation and potentially the Future High Streets Fund motion. But I'd consider these a personal interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whibley.
I'm an Exmouth Town Councillor, which I guess relates to agenda item 12. And my partner has a parking permit from East Devon.
I suspect we'll have a lot of people putting hands up for those kinds of things. Councillor Jarvis.
Hi, I'm just, because of what the motion is about, I work on a high street, so I just wanted a personal interest in that.
Councillor Davey.
Same one. I'm also an Exmouth Town Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Bickley.
If we have to declare parking permits, my husband has one. I'm not sure whether we need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised on that. Agenda item 5 is matters of urgency. There are no matters of urgency. Agenda item 6, announcements from the chair and or leader. I would like to announce the resignation of Councillor Cathy McLaughlin as an EDDC councillor and ward member for Wimple and Rockbere. She was elected in May 2019 and has made a very valuable contribution to the work of the council in her role on a number of committees such as planning. I'd like to thank her for her service and the work that she's done while serving EDDC and wish her well in all of her future work. Agenda item 7, confidential and exempt items. There are no confidential or exempt items. Agenda item 8, to answer questions asked by members of the council pursuant to procedure rules number 9.2 and 9.5. We've had 15 questions and all have been replied to in writing prior to the meeting. The questions have been submitted by Councillor Chapman, Councillor Miller, Hall, Moulding, Allen, Twist, Skinner and Parr. And I will go through each councillor for them to potentially ask supplementary questions in relation to the questions that they have asked. So that means starting with Councillor Chapman. Do you have a supplementary question for question 1, please?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much and good evening. What I really wanted to know, and I'm trying to find out desperately, is domestic abuse in East Devon. We are told nationally it's gone up, but I'm wondering how we are doing in East Devon. In the answer to my question, we were told that we have a safe house in East Devon. I don't need to know where it is. I just need to know if it is adequate. And is there anything else that we can do? Is any support, more support needed? So those are the 2 questions really that I've been trying to find out and my reason for putting the question in the first place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman, for that. The issues are very complicated, as you can imagine. Each case is different. Would you like to know how many approaches we've had from people in the last year? Is that the kind of thing that you're wanting to know? I just wanted to clarify.
What I was interested in is, has it gone up proportionally, as we're told nationally it has? Yes. And my worry is, if it has gone up proportionally due to the lockdown and pandemic, have we got enough resources in place to cope with this, i.e. the safe house that we have, and we're told there's one in Mid Devon, but I'm only interested in East Devon, obviously. Do we need to put more support in place to help out if there is a substantial increase? That's basically what I am after.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Yeah, I mean, the answer does give a description of the complication of all this, and the fact that we are liaised very strongly with other organisations and other places where they can go. I think the bottom line with this is that, yes, we could always do with more places. We could, because it has, in answer to your original question just now, there has been a big increase, the same as nationally, because lockdown has caused, and not just domestic violence, but also relationship breakdowns, which may not include domestic violence actually. So we have had, we've had 88 approaches. I'll just give you some figures, and whether you want to know them or not, I'll just go through them. And I'm certainly happy to follow up. If I don't answer everything that you want me to answer now, I'm more than happy to follow it up with more specific information. So since the 1st of April 20, there have been 88 approaches from people citing fleeing domestic abuse as their reason for approaching. And then there have been another 89 further approaches citing relationship breakdown as in the same time frame. And 27 households have been accommodated in temporary accommodation due to fleeing domestic abuse, and 31 due to relationship breakdowns. And once they're accommodated, the housing options team work hard to support and move on those households as appropriate. And as I said earlier, it's each case is very different, as I'm sure you're aware, you know, and some people are happy to move out of the area, which makes a difference as to where they can be put temporarily. Other people want to stay in the area. So my own personal view is, and I can check this out with our head of housing, is that we never have enough places for things like that. And I know there has been talk about some of the properties that we're buying recently to be set aside specifically for domestic violence and relationship breakdown cases. So it's something that is high on our agenda, and it's been even higher on our agenda since you've been asking these questions. And I totally agree that, you know, we have to ask these questions and we have to get to the bottom of it. So it gives you a flavour of what the issues are, and yes, we could always do with more. But I'm more than happy to answer further questions for you separately if you want to put anything in writing to me. I'm sorry if I'm not.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. That was excellent. I think we perhaps need to continue a conversation on that later.
Okay.
Moving on to questions 2 and 3 from Councillor Miller. Firstly, question 2. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Miller?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And it's good to have clarity, firstly, on what a point of order is and what a point of order isn't. At the last full council meeting, we saw the appearance of the imaginary point of order 11C. There is a procedure rule 11C, but this relates to changing the business of the agenda. The councillor concerned did not wish to change the business. He simply wanted to take the floor, and he was allowed to. Chair, the Constitution states that our business ought to be conducted efficiently. The councillor I refer to has raised no fewer than 77 points of order since the council term began, not one of them legitimate. If more of these points of order happen again tonight, these bogus points of order, if our debates become biased in favour of a councillor who constantly interrupts with no constitutional justification, will you do the right thing and remove this councillor from the meeting? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Miller. I will certainly do my best to make sure that the meeting runs on as smoothly as possible according to the Constitution. Thank you. And do you have a supplementary for question 3, Councillor Miller?
No, I don't, but thank you very much to Councillor Armstrong for her answer.
Thank you. Councillor Hall, do you have a supplementary question for question 4?
I do. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the leader for his response. With DBS, if other councils are going down the route of enhanced DBS as a necessity during the pandemic situation, do you not agree we should surely need to be proactive rather than reactive, as we have with so many motions over this civic term, and we didn't need legal opinion to do the right thing? Thank you.
Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I think it's all in the answer. It has to be a legal answer, because you'll remember perhaps things like the Dangerous Dogs Act, the law of unintended consequences when you legislate in haste to appeal to populist opinion. I am very grateful to our monitoring officer for his legal advice on this, which is in accordance with government legislation. And as I've said in the written answer, if this is an overriding concern for Councillor Hall, and I can respect that, I think he is best to address it to our MP and seek a change in legislation rather than back to this district council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Councillor Moulding, do you have a supplementary for question 5?
Yes, I do, Chair. And I thank the portfolio holder for finance for his answer. And he may or may not be aware that Axminster councillors have been pressing for development at First Avenue Millway Rise for many years. So would he be prepared to meet with officers, the portfolio holder for economy and assets, together with the Axminster ward councillors to discuss potential projects for that site?
Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your supplementary question, Councillor Moulding. Yes, of course I would be, but all of the capital programme that was put in place at the meeting that you also attended in December really surrounded all existing assets, which were largely of a maintenance nature. But of course, in a future financial round, I'm more than happy to meet with you and other interested parties to discuss that further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Allen, you have questions 6, 7, 8, 11 and 12. Do you have a supplementary for question 6?
Yes, I do, Chair. In our Members' Code of Conduct 1.3 D and E, it states that you're accountable for your decisions and you must be as open as possible about your decisions and actions, etc., etc. Now, I did raise the issue concerned with the CEO and SMT, and there are definite gaps in mitigation identified. So what I still want to know is why you downgraded this as so unimportant when it's a legal necessity with potential criminal implications.
That is an interesting question, because in fact, having also debated this with the Chief Executive, I understand that he is looking into this, and this matter may better, when it comes to the next council meeting or before, perhaps be referred for the officer to write a report on this so that the council can move forward and address this matter. If it's as serious as you say, then I'm absolutely certain that the head of paid service will do his best to make sure the council fulfills its obligations. Thank you.
Still didn't answer the question.
Do you have a supplementary for question 7?
Question 7, yes. The Chair of Council has interfered with 3 motions from the Conservative group. So why is the leader colluding in such bias? Will he advise the Chair to resign?
Councillor Arnott.
I've never said this before in my life, but Councillor Allen, I will not dignify that question with a response.
Councillor Allen, do you have a supplementary for question 8?
Yes, the stress risk analysis update is a legal requirement. And so I'm asking why debate will not proceed on this as an emergency, because it is a legal, potential criminal issue.
Councillor Arnott.
At risk of encouraging Councillor Allen to say something else, I don't understand why that is addressed to me, Chair, and therefore I can't really answer it.
Well, I can explain if I'm allowed, Chair.
No, this is
No,
not
you
the forum
won't let
for that.
me this time, no.
No, and members' questions are not the place for a debate.
No,
Do you
I
have a
was gonna
supplementary?
clarify.
Do you have a supplementary for question 11?
The leader did say that people were pushed to the brink in answer to question 15. So does the leader not understand the absolute legal necessity for a proper risk assessment with documented mitigation measures?
Councillor Arnott?
Yes, and I've been grateful to the advice from our HR department and from the CEO, but I have to advise Councillor Allen, I am not a full-time employee of East Devon District Council. These are matters you must properly address to the CEO and head of paid service.
Councillor Allen, do you have a supplementary for question 12?
Yes, the matter was raised and explored with the head of paid service, and please explain why the motion on high street funding was more important than a legal necessity to debate stress risk analysis.
I think I've already made that quite clear, that the number of motions proposed for this meeting seem to be excessive given the other items on the agenda, which I think we're going to take a considerable amount of time. This is a matter, the stress risk assessment and the legal aspects of it are a matter for the head of paid service and certainly need further investigation. And I suggest, if they are so urgent, that that is exactly what happens now. Councillor Twist, do you have a supplementary for question 9?
Yes, thank you very much. In not answering my question, there's a hint of good news from the current leader of this council that work is finally starting on the new council plan. Hip, hip, hooray. My question is, given the snail's pace of progress so far, can we hold out any hope that this plan will be presented to this council between now and the next set of East Devon District Council elections in a fraction over 2 years' time?
Councillor Arnott?
Yes, I mean, Councillor Twist may not have been at the December meeting, but this was explained entirely to Council when the statement of intent. In fact, we're going to look at the minutes for that in a second. What the programme is ahead, and the work starts in March to do this. Councillor Twist may wish us to have begun work on the next council plan within the ongoing inchoate chaos of the pandemic. Perhaps I understand he's very concerned about stress issues for staff, and maybe that's what he thought we should be doing. What we have done is pursued a vigorous and active strategy of change, which we have managed to achieve. I think there is now stability, and we look forward to working with the officers on the basis of the statement of intent to establish the council plan, which should be ready to be looked at late spring, early summer.
Which year?
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. Councillor Skinner.
Chair, can I just come back on that quickly? I find Councillor Twist factious. It's obviously this year.
Thank you.
Councillor Skinner, do you have a supplementary for question 13?
I've got a second question, Chairman.
Sorry, which number? Have I skipped one? I do
10.
apologise.
10.
Question 10. Sorry, they're not all in order and I've missed one. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. The Conservative group, as I hope would others, will always look to set the tone and improving the standards of members' behaviour, not least encouraging the current leader of East Devon District Council to start doing the same. So my question is, will this council embrace and adopt the recommendations from the Copsill review, which members will note was the topic of this question, not what we already know from the internal work of the Standards Committee on East Devon District Council? Thank you.
Well, I think I have to refer Councillor Twiss to the first line of my answer, which said, I'm pleased to hear that the Conservative group is looking to improve member behaviour. I'm now going to claim, like Chris Eubank, that I'm a gentleman, and therefore I'm not going to remind or name the 3 members of Councillor Twiss's own party who have, in very recent months, forced a meeting to be removed from, from the internet live, a meeting to be removed from the internet, and would have been, except for it was in Part B. So I have to say, if you live in a glass house, Councillor Twiss, don't reach for the stones.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Councillor Skinner, do you have a supplementary for question 13?
I do, Chair, and it's to Councillor Ledger. And I thank him for his answer. Very robust, I might say, and then in the council going forward. But my question really was, it also needs to cover off the immediate need, which is why I suggested a working group. Would he support a working group to look at the information that's required to understand for our immediate need on today and us going forward?
Councillor Ledger.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Councillor Skinner. The immediate need, Councillor Skinner, I think we've got enough working parties at the moment with the amount of work that staff have to then draw them into another one. We have plans in place. They're actually, the plans currently in place are those of the former Conservative group. So that's what we're working to until the new local plan gets redone. As soon as that's redone, then we can start working on new plans. But until that time, that we actually take it through strategic planning, I don't think we need to set up a new working group for it.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner, do you have a supplementary for question 14?
Am I able to just ask a question regarding the last question that Councillor Ledger has just asked? Because I need to elaborate a little.
If you have a further question, I suggest you take that up with him outside the meeting. Can you move on to question 14, please?
Okay. And this question is again for Councillor Ledger. And again, I thank you for the very robust answer. But although I understand the well-informed answer that is given, I'm looking for his support to discuss adjustments to our policy to reflect the moment being today in looking forward. Would I have your support for such a move, Councillor Ledger?
Councillor Ledger.
So already the process is as streamlined as possible. Through the local plan process, we will be looking at things like permitted development and how we can arrange policies to that. But that is, again, it's another discussion for strategic planning, and I won't have, that's the correct forum for it. It's a cross-party committee and it needs discussion through that.
Thank you. Councillor Parr, do you have a supplementary for question 15?
Yes, I do, thank you. I thank Councillor Arnott for his long answer, but he completely avoids answering my question, which was, why did it only become clear after Thursday that this must be an urgent matter? Was it made urgent by the joint overview and scrutiny budget meeting on that Thursday, where a question was asked by a council in connection with an employment matter? And this was later the subject of a confidential extraordinary council meeting held behind closed doors. And in view of the importance of openness and transparency to this Democratic Alliance administration, when will the video of that budget meeting be put back on the council's website and YouTube? This is the video that he has just mentioned. Not only did he think it should be taken down for the naming done by a councillor, but this is the video which has had
140 views, and I know that's not quite on the scale of Hanford Parish Council, but it shows Councillor Arnott criticising the Chief Executive for answering the councillor's question, and Councillor Hayward demanding a councillor to shut up. The public should be able to view council meetings, or has it been permanently removed in an attempted cover-up?
Councillor Arnott.
Okay, let's just take a step back here before I give you, or give through you, Chair, Councillor Parr, a question. I think, forgive me, I may have got this wrong. What we're meant to care about here is the mental health and well-being of our officers. This is professed by the Conservatives and others and by officers. And we are meant to care about the mental health and well-being of members as well. And it is absolutely clear that under all sorts of stresses at the moment, this is becoming a challenge. So what this administration did, and I have to say to Councillor Parr, your party had 45 years to do something about this, but did absolutely nothing.
Wasn't a problem.
Look to commission a report, which was an excellent report, to see whether we needed to appoint a mental health officer who could assist both members and officers. And that was thoughtfully considered, urgently considered, and brought forward as fast as possible. And we also, as is in the written answer, looked to and did appoint a member champion for mental health. So that is, I think, the topic that she is addressing. The particular obsession at the moment is why it was delayed. Well, I think that's been explained.
No.
And did it become more urgent because of something which should never have been said, which related to that topic? Yes, it certainly did. Now, if what Councillor Parr wishes to find out is whether the video of that meeting will ever come back online, that is simply not a matter for me. That is a matter for legal judgment. I would say, in the position of the person who was so unwisely and unkindly and injudiciously referenced, I would not want to see that see the light of day again. As far as my own actions and those, I'm sure, of the deputy leader during that meeting are concerned, put it out there. Absolutely nothing to regret.
Good. Councillor Arnott. Thank you. And we're moving on now to agenda item 9, the Revenue Estimates, Capital Programme and Council Tax Resolution for 2021-22. We will now hear the report of the Council's Section 151 Finance Officer, Simon Davey. He will cover precept details of the Parish and Town Councils, Devon County Council, Devon and Cornwall Police and Crime Commissioner, and the Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Authority, so that we are able to approve the calculations which form the basis of the formal setting of the council tax for the district. After hearing Simon's report, a recorded vote will need to be taken on this item so that there is a record of how members have voted in budget setting in line with current legislation. Simon, can I hand over to you, please?
Chair, my apologies. Just before we go into this item, may I declare a late declaration particularly on this item as it relates to precept, as the clerk of All Saints, Chardstock and Newton, Poppleford and Hertford Parish Councils. My apologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Simon Davey, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Oh, excuse me, Chair. I've had my hand up for about 5 minutes. If you're able to allow me to speak.
Do you have a declaration of interest?
No, it's not a declaration of it. It's relating to the last item. It's relating to the last item. I did put it up before the last item.
No, I'm afraid we haven't. This is not the time for discussion. We're moving on. There are no other questions allowed on members' question.
It's not a question. It's a correction to one of the answers. It's something that's inaccurate in one of the answers.
I suggest that you email that to the person concerned, forward to all members afterwards. We'll move on to agenda item 9. Simon, can you
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
present the report?
So this is the final part in the process of agreeing next year's budget. The draft budget and associated service plans have been considered by Cabinet, Overview and Scrutiny Committees and the Housing Review Board. Through this process, members have endorsed the proposed budget, which is now presented for your final approval. Recommendation 1 in the report is to approve the formal council tax resolution, which is set out in Appendix A. This confirms the council's budget for 21-22 and the resulting council tax for East Devon District Council at £151.78 a year. Appendix A and associated schedules set out the formal council tax setting resolution. This incorporates town and parish council tax precepts and also those of the major precepting authorities. I can now confirm that the police, fire and county have set their council tax, and the various schedules and figures for those preceptors are correct as stated in the report. The second recommendation in the report can be taken in isolation if members wish to, in terms of the debate. It is a request for a revenue budget to be allocated to Queen's Drive space of £19,000. This is from funds available within the 21-22 budget, and is also an ask for an increase in the capital budget of £73,000. Details are included in the report, and it's being brought forward to council at this point in time and at this meeting because of the timings required of when the works are needed. So a final point for me to highlight to members in terms of next year's budget is that it does include 300,000 of income from proposed increased car park charges from prime stroke category 1 car parks, and also an increase in parking permits. This item will be discussed and debated later on your agenda. We're considering the scrutiny minutes on the 10th of December. I've been clear through the budget reports the financial risk if not approved and the gap this will leave in our budget. Should the decision be made not to increase the charges when you get to this item, then I'll be required to bring back a report to Cabinet and then on to Council with proposals on budget reductions to meet this gap. If the decision, however, is to delay implementation, then the general fund balance could temporarily meet the shortfall, but the overall position would have to be monitored carefully through the year to ensure there are sufficient funds in that balance in order to do this. Whatever the conclusion members reach on car park charges, I just wanted to be clear when you get to that part of the agenda, I'm content that members can approve the budget set out in this item. Council has available balances to meet the shortfall if required at this stage, and then depending on the outcome of the car park debate, action will be required as I've outlined. So I just wanted to highlight that to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I can see some hands raised here before we take this item to the vote, and I'm assuming that's why these hands are raised. Councillor Moulding.
Yes, Chair. I would be pleased that we can debate the matter of car park charges when we come to the scrutiny item. I think that's the correct way to go. And also, I take the point that Simon Davies made about a separate vote on items 1 and 2. So 1 is to approve the council tax resolution, and 2 is for the Queen's Drive Delivery Group recommendations, which personally I don't agree with. So I'm pleased that we're going to be able to have a separate vote on those 2 items. However, other than that, I have to say that it is a good conservative budget, which is what I would very much expect from the Treasurer, because he has prepared budgets many, many times before, some when I was portfolio holder for finance, and I know what a jolly good job he does. This looks to me like a good budget which I'm sure that the members of my group will be able to agree with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moulding. Councillor Skinner. Oh, Councillor Skinner's disappeared. Councillor Hayward.
He needs to
No,
unmute. Chair.
no, Chair, it was on mute, Chair. You can ask him to speak again.
Councillor Skinner, do you wish to speak?
Sorry, was I on mute? Was I? I do apologise. That was a grave mistake. No, I'll keep it short. I'm just supporting all what Councillor Moulding said. He spoke very well. I support that. Thank you. Move on.
The next hand that I can see is Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Chair. Really just coming back to respond to what Councillor Moulding has just said. A good Conservative budget. So Devon County Council, 4.99% Conservative run. Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon and Cornwall, a Conservative political appointee, 6.73. I think it says it all, really.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised on this item. Simon, can you clarify if we're going to take the votes separately, which resolution number 1, and we'll do a vote on that part first.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just finding the actual recommendation in my report. So recommendation 1 is to approve the formal council tax resolution as set out in Appendix A.
Okay, so we need to have a recorded vote on that, please.
Chair, is that the intention then you're going to split them? Because obviously if there was a proposer to take them together, as in to support the recommendations, then you can just take it as one vote?
I'd like to propose we take them together as it's a recorded vote.
Yeah.
Be here all night.
Is there a seconder for Councillor Miller's proposal to take them together?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Cahill. In that case, we can take the votes on both of those items together. Democratic Services, can you do the recorded vote, please?
Yes, Chair. Okay, I'll read out everyone's names now. Councillor Allen.
Against.
Okay. Councillor Armstrong.
For.
Councillor Arnott.
For.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Bickley.
For.
Councillor Blackie. Councillor Blakey.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, my audio dropped out. I'm for, thank you.
Councillor Bloxham.
For.
Councillor Bond.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Cahill.
For.
Councillor Chamberlain.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Chubb.
For.
Councillor Coleman.
For.
Councillor Davey.
For.
Councillor Dent.
For.
Councillor Faithful.
For.
Councillor Gardner.
For.
Councillor Gazzard.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor Hartnell.
For.
Councillor Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Hayward.
For. Thank you, sir.
Councillor Hookway.
For. Thank you.
Councillor Howe.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Ingham.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4. Thanks, Sue.
Councillor Jarvis.
4, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Jeffrey.
4.
Councillor Johns.
4. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Young.
4.
Councillor Key.
4.
Councillor King.
4.
Councillor Ledger.
Well, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Loudon.
In favour, Sue. Thank you.
Councillor Manley.
4.
Councillor McCollum.
4.
Councillor Miller.
4.
Councillor Moulding.
4.
Councillor Parr.
4.
Councillor Pook.
4.
Councillor Pratt.
4.
Councillor Ranger.
4.
Councillor Rickson.
4.
Councillor Rowland.
4.
Councillor Rylands.
4.
Councillor Skinner.
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
Councillor Thomas.
4.
Councillor Twist.
4.
Councillor Wibley.
4.
Councillor Woodward.
4.
Councillor Ragg.
4.
Councillor Chris Wright.
4.
Councillor Tom Wright.
4, Sue. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we have.
That's 54 in favour and 1 against.
Yep. Thank you.
You're muted, Chair.
I had a cough, so I muted myself. Apologies. Moving on to agenda item 10, reports from Cabinet and Council's committees and questions on those reports. Can I receive the minutes from the following committees and approve any recommendations? Recommendations are summarised on pages 36 to 38. Firstly, can the leader please present the minutes of Cabinet held virtually on the 2nd of December 2020?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to submit to Council, please, the minutes of Cabinet held on the 2nd of December 2020, minute numbers 267 to 271.
Thank you. There are no called minutes. Can we please vote to approve those minutes using the ticks and crosses, please?
For the benefit of those watching, voting is underway. Chair, I have 50 votes in favour.
Thank you. Can I now ask the leader to present the minutes of Cabinet held virtually on the 6th of January 2021?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, again, thank you to Council for allowing me to present the minutes, as you say, of Cabinet from the 6th of January 2021, minute numbers 272 to 302.
Thank you. There is one called minute number 288 from and Councillor Allen has called this minute and it is a recommendation. Councillor Allen, do you wish to speak?
Chair, if I may, also minute 292 has been called by Councillor Allen as well.
Oh, whoops. Yes, thank you. I had my hand over that one. Yes, 2 minutes have been called, 288 and 292. Councillor Allen, do you wish to speak?
Yes, I do, but my reference points are different numbers, so I'm not quite sure. let me speak to them and see if they coordinate. I think the minute regarding the first one is regard to the poverty strategy. Is that correct?
Minute 292 refers to the poverty strategy.
Right. Really, the point there was that we have repeatedly called for urgency in bringing forward a poverty strategy. So far, nothing in the way of a strategic policy other than the Conservative proposals has come forward that we all accepted last time. However, fortunately, Councillor King put forward a proposal for spending an extra 100,000 on supplementing the hardship fund out of the 700,000 allocated to East Devon for this purpose. I'm wondering whether the leader could make some kind of commitment to ring fence the rest for poverty relief and hardship relief, because that's what the money was for. And could the leader tell us when we can expect, because it's been going on since November 2019, when we can expect a full poverty strategy to be presented?
Yeah, Chair, can I just ask which minutes are we actually on there?
That was minute 292.
Okay, so but
the one I
288
have.
Councillor Allen wasn't interested in, but he was in 292. Is that right?
At the moment, he's certainly just talking about minute 292 and the poverty strategy, yes.
Okay, right. Thank you for your question, Councillor Allen. I think that the best thing to do here, first of all, I'm aware of Councillor Allen's presence in every single meeting on this subject, and a strategy which has been led faultlessly by Councillor Armstrong here. It does seem to be an evolving picture, and it definitely is, there's no doubt about it. We also know that the availability of the recent money is something that has obviously, by definition, come about very recently. I don't think you want a leader of this council who'd be so arrogant as to say, I say that money goes to there. Surely that should be a matter of the debate for the various panels and forums. If Councillor Armstrong would wish to comment here, Chair, I don't know if that's permissible, but she has the greater knowledge on this than me.
Thank you, Councillor Arnott. I see a couple of other hands have been raised. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was mentioned by just now. I wanted to clarify the point about the 100,000. I can only use my failing memory to give an account. The 100,000 was qualified as being a contingency because there was in the background a hope and belief that the Devon County Council would be putting forward funds, and in due course that did happen. It's an ongoing situation, and like with so many things in life, the activities this council undertakes and the officers undertake are not in isolation. They take place in a much larger sort of ecosphere, and I think the partnership between this council and other councils is working very well. So I would just like to encourage give an encouraging answer, which is that to Councillor Allen, which is that he may not be getting statements about acceleration, but things are happening and they're all going in the right direction, and we are pulling through. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ledger.
Thank you, Chair. I just think that this whole calling on the minute is just a bit disingenuous. It's Councillor Allen himself sat in the last poverty meeting and said how fantastic the meeting was run, how amazing it was to get the information from the experts. And this whole poverty and the poverty strategy should be evidence-based. not half cooked and half baked. It just baffles me that on one hand he's criticising it, and then in other meetings he's there praising everyone. Which one is it, Councillor Allen?
Councillor Armstrong, I see you've raised your hand.
Oh yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to confirm, and if Mike and I were talking together, I'm sure we'd be able to sort this out. All right, but as this is a public meeting, the plan is that the next meeting in March will be covered by our housing lead. And that will get almost to the end of all our professional input from our various teams and departments in the council. And then in April, we should have certainly a draft poverty strategy ready for people to look at in the poverty panel and the council. So it's very soon. It's a couple of months as far as that's concerned. I'm just looking at the minutes of the last meeting, not the meeting just this last week, but the one before, where Councillor King proposed a recommendation be made to Cabinet the contingency of 100,000 be allocated to the Council's hardship fund after April 21 to be reduced by any additional funding coming forward from Devon County Council in the same time frame. So that was the agreement. So I assume from that is all we can do at the moment, and I'm not sure whether Simon is able to comment on the financial aspect of it or not, but it would be lovely, yes, it would be lovely to have more money, much as we need more houses for people who are suffering from domestic violence, but it all has to be assessed, and I'm not the expert on the finance side of things. So if Simon felt he had to comment on that, I'm not sure whether that's answered Councillor Allen's queries or not, but certainly the poverty strategy, there will be a poverty strategy ready in April. And I don't know whether John Golding wants to comment as well, because he's doing a lot of the donkey work behind the scenes on this.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Obviously, we don't want to have a discussion particularly about the poverty strategy, and I'm really pleased that it's making great progress. It's such an important issue.
Since I was named by Councillor Ledger in particular.
Briefly, Councillor Allen, you may respond because you were named.
Yeah. The short answer to Councillor Ledger is that I'm solidly behind the hard work that Megan Armstrong and the Poverty Group have actually provided. I just want the financing to be clearer, and we're talking about putting together the final budget, and I'm very, very concerned that we reserve the right amount of money from the government funding that's been put forward. And Councillor King put a contingent proposal forward, but there is 700,000 being put forward by the government, and I'm very concerned that we don't lose sight of that. So perhaps we could consider that at the next poverty strategy meeting and get more definitive about what's needed, because right now we're just moving into the lockdown release period, and we're going to really know how much poverty and how much unemployment is actually out there. Thank you for letting me talk.
Can we now please vote on those minutes using our...
I thought Councillor Allen did want to talk on 288.
It didn't seem as though he had a point to make on 288.
288, I think, was to do with the funding on the local plan review.
Yes, 300,000 on garden communities and delivery vehicles.
That's right.
You called the minute.
Yes. What I'm basically saying is there's a large amount of money and a lot of extra staff that we didn't need for the local plan when we first developed it. And I'm wondering why so much money is being put into a local plan review when there is such a need for funding for poverty. So that's the only comment I wanted to make. I think it's disproportionate.
Yeah, can I refer that to Councillor Ledger?
Councillor Ledger. Is that actually relevant to minute 288? What I see of minute 288 in the recommendation is not that
Okay,
topic.
we've passed it, Chair, but all I can say on the matter is it's a cross-party committee and it was agreed unanimously.
Yeah. Thank you. Can we now vote on those cabinet minutes, please?
Okay, Chair, I've got 50 votes in favour of agreeing the minutes.
Thank you. Leader, can you please present the minutes of cabinet held virtually on the 20th of January?
Yes, if I can remember where we are. Yes, Chair, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to present for full council the minutes of cabinet held on the 20th of January 2021. The minute numbers applying are 303 to 309. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no called minutes. Can I now invite members to vote again, please, on these minutes?
Just 1 votes in favour.
Thank you. Leader, can you please present the minutes of cabinet held virtually on the 3rd of February?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to present to Council the minutes of Cabinet held on the 3rd of February 2021. The minute numbers are 310 to 331. Thank you.
Thank you. And I note that Councillor Allen has called minute 318 and minute 321. Councillor Allen, do you have further comments to make?
On 321, because we've already discussed the poverty working panel. On 321, the question being put is around the issue of the supporting the economic recovery. And there's a resolution regarding the £1 million from the business rate pilot reserve that is being put forward for expenditure, along with an ARG budget of about £100,000. And I just wanted to ask the Deputy Leader if he could clarify the decision that was made, because there was a discussion, it says, concerning high growth and innovative businesses in the scientific, technological, IT and creative media sectors. But it was pointed out these types of industry had access to other forms of support and they weren't considered appropriate. And yet he's also announced that the new grant fund will include any business where revenue fell more than 30%. So I simply want to know what is in fact intended in terms of eligibility for these new grant funds. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose through you, can I ask Councillor Allen if he received the email from our officer, Andy Wood, today?
No, I didn't.
Oh, my apologies. That was, I thought that had been sent to you. Well, essentially, they are two separate things. The adaptation fund is for businesses that are having to adapt and innovate and be resilient. And that's a scheme that we are developing. ARG is a set of criteria laid down by this Conservative government that we as the agent for those funds are having to administer. They're two separate things. But I will make sure that Mr. Wood gets that back to you. He and I have certainly discussed it. My apologies that that email didn't get to you today. I'll address that tomorrow.
Yeah, my main concern is that the businesses find out what the eligibility criteria and we get on with getting the money where it's going to be useful.
I'm sure Councillor Hayward and the officers will be doing that as soon as possible. Can we now vote on those minutes, please, using the green ticks and the red crosses?
Chair, I have 49 votes in favour. Oh, 50, in fact.
Thank you. Now moving on, Councillor Brown, can you please present the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee held virtually on the 10th of December 2020?
Thank you. I present the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee held on the 10th of December 2020, minutes number 95 to 107. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a called minute 106 of the Scrutiny Committee meeting. This relates to the recommendation on the increase in car parking charges. And that minute was called by Councillor Miller. And before we move on to any further discussion, I just want to remind members that we need to be clear about the car parks that are being discussed or proposed for price rises. And I have a list of them should there be any confusion on that. So Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will be moving an alternative recommendation to the two that are proposed. But before I do, I'd like to clarify some important points on behalf of any members of the public that might be watching us with regard to some issues that have been misrepresented in the local press. Firstly, it's worth pointing out that our car parking tariffs have not increased at all since the Conservative-driven austerity programme nearly 11 years ago. At that time, we received approximately a third of our general fund income via government revenue support grants. We now receive nothing, and both VAT and inflation have increased during that period. This long-term and continuing lack of central government support to fund the public services they make us duty-bound to provide is why Simon Jupp MP's comments in his weekly Exmouth Journal and Midweek Herald column are so appalling in their gross laziness and inaccuracy. Now is not the time to line the council coffers, he wrote. As we all know, this money is going on protecting and improving vital services that government Mr. Jupp's party is leading is not adequately supporting, such as our leisure centres, our duties to relieve homelessness because the government haven't outlawed no-fault evictions as their manifesto promised, our duties to deal with the impact of increasing poverty because the government refused to do the right thing and keep the £20 a week uplift for universal credit. Mr. Jupp also suggested that the decision we have before us is a political proposal from independent councillors. Again, he is completely wrong. These recommendations have come from the non-political scrutiny committee, chaired by a member of the Conservative group who voted to propose the increase, and it is a decision for full council, not cabinet, following the successful amendment I made to the Constitution in October 2019. Mr. Jupp's statements are frankly an insult and pay a disservice to Councillor Rowland, Councillor King, and our finance officers led by Simon Davey, who have worked with incredible diligence and skill to balance this budget in these extraordinary times. But it's these extraordinary times that lead me on to my alternative recommendations. The Prime Minister has announced that businesses will be able to reopen on the 15th of April. Under these recommendations, we would be increasing tariffs and permits situated around so many of these businesses on the 1st of April of this year. For the last 12 months, we as a council have expeditiously administered grants totaling many millions of pounds to keep our small and medium-sized local businesses alive. At this crucial stage, where many local businesses have very narrowly survived going under and come to the end of a marathon of hell, why would we let them fall at the moment they approach the finish line? Why at this time would we nudge people out of our high streets and town centres, near which, as I say, many of these Category 1 car parks are? In my view, we need to be encouraging our residents back to high streets and town centres after what will have been over a year of residents getting into the routine of online shopping. Therefore, for the upcoming year, I believe that it's right and it's in the interests of our economic recovery that 300,000 projected savings ought to be saved elsewhere in the budget, and both the portfolio holder for finance, Councillor Rowland and Simon Davey, assure me, and Simon mentioned it earlier, that this can be done, but for 1 year only. While I resolutely believe raising our charges has to happen given the rises in VAT and inflation and the fact we're no longer receiving the financial support from central government we used to, the fact that it will contribute to our carbon reduction programme, doing it in less than 2 months' time would be the wrong thing to do. So my alternative recommendation reads thus: that Council agrees to defer the recommended increases for Category 1 car parks and all permits until the 1st of April 2022. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Can I just clarify that in fact the change that you are making is to in recommendation from minute number 106, recommendation 1, that the changes would be effective from the 1st of April 2022. That all the other words there basically remain the same.
There are 2 recommendations, and I'm proposing to replace them both with one single recommendation because there's a second one on permits.
I just need to provide clarity to members who can't see anything new written down. That's the that's the challenge at the moment. So can you read that out again, please? Your proposed change.
That Council agrees to defer the recommended increases for Category 1 car parks and all permits until the 1st of April 2022.
If I may correct, yes, I think we need to actually confirm that there is the increase. I think your amendment there, Councillor Miller, assumes that we've agreed the increase and then amends the date. Is that what you want to say, Henry?
Sorry. Yeah, well, no, it wasn't actually. I think Councillor Miller was talking about the second recommendation as well being changed, and I think it would be useful to have them both at the same time.
Yes, I just want to clarify that what we're actually saying is that we are confirm the introduction of a new tariff of £1.20 per hour in East Devon District Council's Category 1 prime location car parks, but effective from 1st of April 2022, because the council first has to agree the rise. It can't just say we're going to defer it, if I'm correct in understanding what you're saying. And also that the increase in or the changes to the pricing structure for car park permits will also be implemented from April 2022. Is that correct? And perhaps Councillor Rowland can clarify.
Thank you, Chair. I actually wanted to second Councillor Miller's proposal and say a few words and hopefully clarify things as well.
Sorry, Chair, can we clarify exactly what is being proposed before we start worrying about what support for it? I think we need to be clear what exactly is being proposed, please.
I'm proposing and seconding what Councillor Miller said in respect of the £1.20 increase being effective from April 2022 as a minimum at that time.
And for the permits?
And also that we defer any increase in the permits until the same date.
And is that what Councillor Miller is proposing? Because he hasn't said it yet.
But that is what I said, that we defer the recommended increases for Category 1 car parks and all permits. I did say that until the 1st of April 2022. So, I don't mind how it's worded. If you would like to suggest a different word, that's fine.
Sorry, I didn't catch the permits bit.
Sorry. Okay, well, I did say.
I think both recommendation 1 and recommendation 2 need to say from effective in the 1st of April 2022. That will be the recommendation that we would be going with if it's accepted as an amendment. We just want to be clear that we are approving a rise. It's just that the rise isn't effective until April 2022.
That's clear, yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah, I like to have clarity. I have to vote too. We have to make sure we know what we're voting for.
All right, Chair. Can I say a few words now in support?
Yes, Councillor Rowland, please. You're seconding. I understand.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's important to remember in this particular situation why I'm actually talking about deferring this. We're talking about having to fill a gap of £300,000 potentially, which will actually diminish our reserves to the absolute minimum over the remainder of this financial year. So it's really important about monitoring that reserve, because I'd hate to be placing Simon Davey in a very awkward situation as we approach the year end. Because we have to legally have that minimum of £3 million. So it's very important as well. There's no way of getting away from this, that we have to increase those car park charges. Ideally, we would have done it in this financial year, but I fully accept, because of the exceptional circumstances that we're in, that is not the best way to go forward. But next year we will have to, mainly because of the medium-term financial plan, which is providing some challenges going forward anyway. And also for that very reason as well, that because of the reserve being taken down to its £3 million level, the danger is obviously in the remainder of this year, if we are hit with any further emergencies or extraordinary requests, we'll have to be looking at how that money is going to be raised, or actually have to defer or even reduce some other services, which we obviously don't want to do. So I would put that word of caution in and say how essential it is that these increases will have to go ahead, but not this financial year, but at the start of the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. We should, I think, vote on the revised recommendations before we need to accept. We want to accept the revised recommendation before we have any further debate, or do we have debate first? Sorry, Henry.
Well, Chair, I think, I mean, ultimately that's nice for you, whether you think there's been enough debate on the proposed amendments before voting on them.
I think we should have some debate about the issue of whether we're raising now or later, because I think that's going to be a concern for a lot of members. I would anticipate that was already going to be a question. So can people please, who've raised your hands, the main question we're looking at now is an issue about, should this basically happen now or should it happen next year? And then we will be deciding whether we're accepting this amended recommendation or whether we will stick to the original date. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I am concerned about the wording still. I would like to see the words, forgive me for being vague, that council approves the increase and that it defers, to have that absolutely categorical, because in a year's time, all sorts of reinterpretations can take place unless it is absolute in words. And on the matter specifically about deferring it, I think we must defer it. I was of the opinion that we have to have it this year, and people know that I was holding my ground on that. But quite simply, having heard Councillor Miller put his case just now, I withdraw from trying to push for it this year, and I do recommend that it comes into play next year on the basis that it is approved, the increase is approved now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Moulding.
Yes, Chair, thank you. And I'm pleased that Councillor Rowland gave a sensible description of what we are proposing to do. And Councillor King has supported that, and I would support that. What I wouldn't support is all the political ramblings of Councillor Miller getting to the stage of wanting to say merely that we're going to defer these car parking charges to next year. I'm in favour of that, but I don't agree with all those political gerrymandering from Councillor Miller that we heard just now. Thank you.
Councillor Ledger.
There's sorry, get my video on. There's two small points. We've said category 1 car parks in previous TAF meetings. There's been a lot more category 1 car parks. Obviously Seaton's not on this list, Ottery, Axminster. Can we have in the minutes just a clarification of which car parks will be going up, because that's not listed. And then the second point is, and it's more of just trying to push an amendment that we asking Councillor Miller and Councillor Rowland that we can start having the monthly permits from now. We don't defer that part until next year, because that is something that will be affordable it'll improve affordability to our residents and something that could really help them now.
Thank you, Councillor Ledger. I think it would be extremely useful if the minutes reflected the category 1 car parks that these rises are proposed for, which I have as car parks in Sidmouth Town, Exmouth, Honiton, Beer and Budley, but not the other towns that previously might have been considered as category 1. So I think we should make sure those are minuted. The question about actually the second part of the recommendation, Councillor Miller, Councillor Ledger suggested that we should actually leave that as implemented from April 2021 because it improves affordability. Are you prepared to change your amendments before we take it forward?
Apologies, Chair. Just to clarify that, it's not the rises, it's just the fact that we bring in a monthly permit. It's not the rises in the permits. It's just the fact that we bring in that feature of a monthly permit for our residents.
Apologies. This is always such a complicated and controversial topic.
If that's the case, I accept what Councillor Ledger has just said. I have just provided Henry with some different wording, perhaps to be more clear, that Council approves the recommended increase for category 1 car parks to be effective in April, 1st of April 2022. So we're not talking about, if the word deferral is perhaps confusing people, that's fine. But
Chair, if I may, I think all that needs to happen is the recommendation is amended, so it just says the 1st of April 2022. I think that's all you need to do for the first one.
Yeah.
Fine.
And I'm struggling with the second one slightly now, I have to say. I'm not really sure what's being proposed and what isn't. So as I understood it, what was written was intended to read effectively as is, with from April 22 at the end. But I'm not sure quite what's now being proposed there, or whether or not Councillor Miller is willing to accept it.
I think actually, if I may comment on that, I think, as I understand it, the implementation of the first part of that will be from April 2022. The final sentence, to provide a pay monthly scheme for all regular customers starting with a single town permit for just £10 a month, will be implemented from 1st of April 2021. Is that correct? I see a few people nodding.
So is that what Councillor Ledger was saying? And if so, is Councillor Miller accepting that?
Yes. It's just about wording. I don't know.
Yes, it's splitting these things out to be precise enough. Assuming that that's now what we're looking at. So it's effectively recommendation 1 to increase from April 2022. Recommendation 2 is basically got 2 parts. The charging increase effective from 2022, but the pay monthly permit scheme introduced from this April because it makes things more affordable. I'll continue to move through the hands for other people to make perhaps different comments. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. And I think it's a very sensible move to be talking about deferring it until later next year, on the basis that we just don't know where we're going to be. And I think the timing for that is quite wrong now. But I'm also going to chip my 2 penny worth in regarding what Councillor Moorings said about Councillor Miller. And I think that probably it was a party political broadcast on part of the Labour Party. And that's where Councillor Miller was coming from. And I just hope that when we get to the next election, those people in that view will actually stand for that particular view. Thank you.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to express a rather different view in that I am concerned about postponing the increase until April 2022. I'm concerned that there's been no rise for a very long time, and I feel that it's going to have obviously an impact on our reserves. And I've heard what Simon Davey has said, but to me, the sensible course would have been, or would be, to proceed with the recommendations of the Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. I do agree with the councillor a few minutes ago who talked about with concern about the political gerrymandering of this issue. I think the word gerrymandering was perhaps slightly wrong, but I take his sentiment fully because I concur with him, because this issue has been politically weaponized. And I think Councillor Miller earlier on referred to our erstwhile East Devon MP having done it somewhat erroneously. And I look around the screens here tonight, there's a number of you here from at least one party who've been weaponizing this politically out there. So I'm pleased that the leader agrees with me, and I do hope that he will take his members in hand and deal with this most effectively for the benefit of the residents of East Devon and this council. Now, having said that, I would, Chair, invite colleagues to agree that we should, because it's such a difficult issue, that we should now put this to the vote and that we should have a recorded vote at the same time. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for this amendment to be put to the vote? Sorry, I didn't hear or see who that was.
If I can, am I allowed to?
I would support the motion that Councillor Loudon has put forward for a recorded vote.
Okay, we have two requests here. We have a request for this amendment to be put to the vote and for the vote to be recorded. So first of all, we need to, well, hold on, actually, which one do we do first? The recorded vote.
Sorry to interrupt.
Henry, sorry. Henry.
I've just had my hand up for some time and I want to make something, what I think might be a helpful comment.
Councillor Miller, unfortunately, somebody has asked for the vote to be put.
No,
I don't think they have.
I
think they've asked for a recorded
right.
vote.
I think I have something which I think will be useful for this council, certainly in 2022.
Go ahead, Councillor Wright. You were next on the list.
Yes, thank you. I agree that in these circumstances, it will be sensible to put this decision off. And I say that perhaps we'll be hamstringing this council if we now are deciding what those increases should be in 2022. So I think any decision on increases should be put off, but I don't think we should hamstring this council by at this stage deciding what those increases should be. That's the other point I want to say. And the other point I want to say about talking about the political impact. For some time, I was a deputy portfolio holder for the portfolio responsible for car parks. And one of the reasons that the car park prices were not put up was that we attended many meetings where there were members of Chamber of Commerce and other interested parties pleading with us not only not to put the car parking charges up, but to make car parking free. So that puts a slightly different balance on it, that there was strong pressures from towns like Sidmouth, Budleigh Salted and Exmouth not to, in fact, to make all the car parking free. So it wasn't just the political decision not to do it. It was, in fact, a decision based on the submissions and the representations made by various other interested parties. So what I'm saying is, I totally agree that we should not do it at this stage, but I also think it would be unwise at this stage to limit the freedom of this council to decide what those increases should be 13, 14 months down the road. That's all I want to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Chair, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm not going to politicise this at all. What I'm going to do is take a slightly different and more fundamental slant. A balanced budget means that the cash we get in during the year has to broadly match that which goes out. What I understand we're implying by not going forward with this in the coming year is a shortfall of 300,000, effectively out of a £9 million circa general fund budget. This is not trivial. This is over 3% of your total revenue budget, councillors. The principle of how we operate the finances of our council, unless it's changed since I was leader, which I don't believe it has, is that we deliver our statutory responsibilities in the most cost-effective and efficient manner we can, together with those specific discretionary services that we can actually afford. Specifically, I'd like to ask a question of this administration. My colleague, former, well, still a colleague, but Associate Councillor Rowlands, and also the leader, because this needs a decision from the top for me. Specifically, how does this administration intend to make up that sum in this coming year? Or is it, as I heard Councillor Rowland comment, I believe I'm reporting him correctly, taking our reserves down to the absolute minimum permissible level? I think in uncertain times like these, that borders on irresponsible, and for me is a risk far too far to support this proposal. And I think councillors need to look quite seriously at themselves and think we've been around this loop before. We bottled the car park process in, was it 12 months, 18 months ago? And it was a great disappointment. I think in some respects it wasn't presented clearly then, but that's certainly not the case now. So as I say, if the administration is confident enough from the proposer downwards and across the chamber to actually propose that we actually take this step and go down £300,000 now, I'd actually like to have it back. What of our discretionary areas of responsibility, accounting for £300,000 in our revenue budget in the coming year, are they prepared to see us not do? Sorry if that sounds very direct, Chair, but I think we've sailed close to the wind on a number of occasions. But on this case, we're sailing close to the wind into the eye of a storm. And I think that's irresponsible for a public body. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Rowland, do you wish to answer?
Yeah, thank you. That's why I made it very clear when I seconded this recommendation that was put forward, that what the implications were about the finances and why it was essential that we need to see an increase next year. I take no pleasure in an ideal world that we would be faced with this situation. But I do strongly feel this is the wrong time because of the highly unusual circumstances that we're in to be increasing those car park charges at the moment. I realise the risks that are inherent, which is why I said we're taking this down to £3 million potentially. I've had many discussions with Simon Davey about this particular subject. He, if I can say on his behalf, is comfortable with what we're proposing because of what we're putting forward now, that there's going to be certainty about an increase next year. The reserves are there for a reason. Ideally, we wouldn't be taking them down to a minimum. And that's why I said, if we're faced with more emergencies over the course of this next financial year, we'd have to think very hard about what the impact is and what decisions we're going to make at that time. So I hope I've answered Councillor Thomas. I would like to take this opportunity, by the way, if I haven't said this before, as Councillor Thomas was my predecessor, I would like to thank him here at the moment to say thank you very much for the very helpful handover that he gave to me, which was, I found very helpful in part of my education and taking over this portfolio. We're faced with a really unusual situation. I stand by seconding this recommendation and hope other members will support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I actually like Councillor Miller. I think he's got a lot of very good ideas. It's a shame that he flavours it with negativity, but the suggestion of deferring the increases is absolutely essential in the current circumstances. If the finance head doesn't choose to track committed funds, track commitments of funds as we go forward, then that may lead to an uncontrollable situation if emergencies do occur. I know that we have a substantial set of reserves, far larger than they were when we started. When the Conservatives handed over control, they were very thoroughly good reserves. Now we want to take them down to the bone, then we need to put a system in that makes a very careful track of what is irredeemably committed going forward, so that we can work with safety within the constraints that is being proposed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've still got quite a few hands up and I'm aware of the time on this matter. I'm going to draw a line under these names, but some people have had their hands up for quite a while. So Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Chair. I thoroughly endorse the comments from Councillor Thomas and Bailey. It's been 10 years since there's been an increase. It starts from a low base, and the increase is modest in that context. I think if it's from the 1st of April, I should only be going for essential shopping. So I'm not going to stop and think, oh, I've got 20p extra to pay in a car park. I'm going to go anyway for that shopping. And then the other point, as mentioned, is the services which, as a council, we have to provide for our residents. We need to ensure that we have sufficient finances for all our residents and their services, not just one section. So I think it's only right that we should have a prudent, balanced budget, which has already been discussed. And if we take out £300,000, then aspects and initiatives such as the poverty strategy are not going to get done in the same way. So I think we should stick with the recommendation as put in the council papers. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call 3 more councillors and then we will move on to the votes according to what we have on the table at the moment. So Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Now, I've been on the car parking TAF for quite some time now, and we started out doing it in a methodical way on which car parks were actually used for what. It now has come down to the fact that the car parks that generate the most income are the ones that are going to get the increase. And I agree that it shouldn't be put up exactly this year, but the money would be coming in next year. So that would cover the reserves. So we would be all right there. But what I find particularly galling is councillors having a view on it when they are not going to get their car parking charges put up. And therefore, I would like to say, yes, I agree. It should be deferred to allow the businesses to pick up, to get people back to the habit of going into town rather than buying online. And I would like to put forward that all councillors should be in the same position, all residents should be in the same position, and every single car park in East Devon should have the same parking charges. Because I think it grossly unfair that the car parks in Exmouth that generate over £2 million are the ones again targeted, and some of the villages, because they're small and they've only got one shop, they don't have to pay it. No, come on, chaps, you know, let's be reasonable. We're either all in it together or we're not. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I am chair. I think I've got, I was using Councillor Jackson as my last speaker. So before that is Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Chair. I was trying to come up with some alternate recommendations that take on board all the nuances of all the contributions so far, but it just keeps changing on a cycle, so I'll defer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson, final speaker.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that
there's going to have to be rises in our car parking charges. Unfortunately, we've had a very slow and steady reduction in the funding from central government over many years, and we haven't put our charges up, and we're at a point where we've got to generate some revenue somewhere to support additional services. However, I welcome the suggestion of deferral, because we have just had the roadmap through for coming out of COVID, which is going to be a time-consuming process, and for people to get back into some semblance of normality, get back into work. Some people are redundant. There are additional financial pressures. So I think it's a sensible thing to defer it, but I think we need to be clear that there do need to be some rises. But I'm particularly supportive of the proposal put forward by Councillor Ledger around ensuring that the permits are brought forward earlier than the rest of the proposal, which has been deferred until, or will be implemented later on, because I think it's really important that we make our residents aware that there are actually more cost-effective ways for them to use our car parks than they perhaps are currently aware of. And to implement a monthly charge, I think would be incredibly helpful for those who maybe at present don't have the same sort of security that they might normally have, where they would be able to pay for a whole year up front. So I welcome that. I welcome the proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My apologies for interrupting, Chair, but I was mentioned on a number of occasions in subsequent speakers. Am I able on that basis to briefly reply?
Very, very briefly, please, Councillor Thomas.
I say my apologies for interrupting, Chair, but I think this is fundamentally important, as I hope came across clearly from my first short statement. I'd like to thank Councillor Rowlands for his acknowledgement of the work we did in giving him a good handover, because I think it's important, and whoever's running the finances of this council, it's important that they run prudently and properly in the public benefit, not just restricted to car parks. And also the key, nobody's come forward with any alternatives other than running our budgets down to the absolute and reserves down to the absolute minimum at a time of enormous uncertainty. I can't, you look at the look at the world economy as it stands at the moment, look at the financial markets, they don't know which way to jump. And it doesn't take much of a jump to put inflation through the ceiling and put a serious threat under our revenue budgets in significantly less than 12 months' time. Simon knows that inflation was a thing that we've tactically been able to ignore over the last decade, largely because of low interest rates. And I noticed he had an involuntary nod then, but that's absolutely not something we can be certain of over the next few years. So again, I did ask the leader quite specifically to come to either support me in what I'm saying, or be quite specific that he is happy under the current circumstances that our council finances go right down to the base permitted in terms of reserves in the coming year. Because I think that if that's the case, I would certainly like a recorded vote on all of this. And I'd actually prefer ultimately how we arrive at it, that the proposal from the committee is put as written without any amendment at all. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I accept I'm fully quite possibly going to lose this vote, Chair, but I think there are some, it is that serious.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Right, we do need to move to votes, and I think the first vote we need to take is on having a recorded vote. Is that correct?
Sorry, Chair. God, you know, I have been asked the question. I mean, should I answer it? I don't mind not.
If it's not essential that you answer it, I think we can move on.
Well, Councillor Thomas is exclaiming there dramatically. So with your permission, I will. A few comments, echo what Jack had said. It was a good handover. Would remind Councillor Thomas that he was the key financial figure for this council for many years. Why didn't you fix the roof when the sun was shining? Why didn't you get the car park fees put up at that stage? Why didn't you deal with council tax similarly? We're now stuck with this. We cannot do a socially conscious council on Mrs. Thatcher's handbag, Chair, I say to Councillor Thomas. Councillor Rowland has had extensive and sensible discussions with the strategic lead for finance, which confirm that if the strategic lead is assured that this money will come through, certainly, then this council can cope. But what we cannot do, and it's all very well for the likes of, I'm tooling around in a 2003 Honda Jazz at the moment. Councillor Thomas is perhaps better heeled than many of my constituents. What you have to understand is that the signal that is being sent from the Conservatives, if this goes up now, is that local towns will be closed for business. That is what they will say. They will agitate. They will say, oh, the betrayal, just as we're all getting vaccinated, just as everybody wants to come back to the shops, you swine put it up so nobody can afford it. Well, do you know what? Some people can't afford it. They're not as well-heeled. They're not living in a luxurious retirement as many of the members in this council are. It will put them off from shopping. And I can also say, with regard to Councillor Chapman's comments, that when you have a small village or town with a shop and somebody wants to come and do a very small shop and it's going to cost them an extra 20p or 50p, they do not come in. Now, it may be that that is not understood by members whose wards are not rural or semi-rural wards that depend upon small ex-market towns for the local shopping, which comes with community as well. This seems to me, as I've said, this is not the time for Mrs. Thatcher's handbag. This is the time for prudence, a la Gordon Brown, which is the money will come through and you have to make a social choice here. Do you want to seize up and destroy confidence in the local economy, or do you want to give it some breathing space for a year? And I think the balance of risk there is that we need to give it the breathing space. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right. I think there's no need for further responses or debate. We need to have a vote. And my understanding is we should vote on the request for a recorded vote first, which was proposed by Councillor Loudon and seconded by, well, I think
I'll second that, Chair, very happily.
Councillor Thomas has definitely seconded it as well. So the first vote for a recorded vote, please. Sorry, Sue, we can't hear you.
54, 1 against.
43.
Thank you. Thank you. So we need to vote on the revised recommendation. Henry, do you have actual revised wording there to help us?
Yeah, I think it's as printed with a couple of tweaks. So the first one reads that the TAF members propose the introduction of a new tariff of £1. Well, there is a new tariff of £1.20 per hour in East Devon District Council's Category 1 prime location car parks, which will be listed in the minutes, effective from the 1st of April 2022. And the second one reads that there is an introduction of a revised pricing structure for car parking permits with a £1.20 per annum for a single town and an additional 24 per each town added, up to a maximum annual permit charge of £240 to cover all towns from April 2022, and to provide a pay monthly scheme for all regular customers starting with single town permit for just £10 per month from April 2021.
Thank you, Henry. That is as I understood it as well. So can we please go to the vote, and as it's a recorded vote, we will do the roll call.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm not sure if there's any doubt. This is the substantive vote on it because it's only a recommendation to council. So yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Allen,
4, Sue, thank you.
Councillor Armstrong,
Abstain.
Councillor Arnott,
4,
Councillor Bailey,
Against.
Councillor Bickley,
4.
Councillor Blakey,
Against.
Councillor Bloxham,
Against.
Councillor Bond,
Against.
Councillor Brown, Councillor Brown,
Oh, sorry, against.
Councillor Cahill,
4.
Councillor Cahill, Councillor Chamberlain,
4.
Councillor Chapman, Councillor Chapman,
Abstain.
Councillor Chubb,
Against.
Councillor Coleman,
Against.
Councillor Davey,
4.
Councillor Dent,
Against.
Councillor Faithful,
4.
Councillor Gardner,
4.
Councillor Gazzard,
4.
Councillor Hall,
Against.
Councillor Hartnell,
Against.
Councillor Hawkins,
4.
Councillor Haywood,
4. Thank you.
Councillor Hookway,
4, thank you.
Councillor Howe,
4,
Councillor Hughes,
4.
Councillor Ingham,
4.
Councillor Jackson,
4.
Councillor Jarvis,
Against.
Councillor Jeffrey,
4,
Councillor Johns,
4.
Councillor Young,
4.
Councillor Key,
4.
Councillor King,
4,
Councillor Ledger,
4.
Councillor Loudon,
In favour, Sue.
Councillor Hanley,
4.
Councillor McCollum,
4.
Councillor Miller,
4.
Councillor Moulding,
4.
Councillor Pratt, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Ranger,
4.
Councillor Rickson,
4.
Councillor Rowland,
4.
Councillor Rylance,
4.
Councillor Skinner,
4.
Councillor Taylor,
4.
Councillor Thomas,
Against as presented.
Councillor Twist,
Against.
Councillor Woodley,
4.
Councillor Woodward,
Against.
Councillor Ragg,
4.
Councillor Chris Wright,
Against.
Councillor Tom Wright,
Against.
Okay. I make it 36 in favour, 17 against, and 2 abstaining.
Thank you, Sue. I think therefore we now actually need to go back and vote on the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee meeting that was called from. So can we please now vote in favour of accepting those minutes with your green ticks? Thank you.
Chair, I have 50 votes in favour.
Thank you, Sue. Councillor Brown, can you present the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee held virtually on the 4th of February 2021, please?
I've got to find it, just 1 second. The minutes of the scrutiny meeting held on the, what date did you say, 13th of January?
No, this is the 4th of February.
Oh, 4th of February, oh, sorry. Minutes, I present the minutes of the scrutiny meeting held on the 4th of February, minutes number 122 to 130.
Thank you. We have one called minute from Councillor Young. So can somebody please mute because we can hear background noise? We have one called minute from minute 128 from Councillor Young. I think he wishes to make a statement to correct an inaccuracy in the minute. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to correct an inaccuracy regarding the Exmouth Beach Management Plan cost, which was attributed to East Devon District Council. Councillor Cargill implied that the cost was 250,000 to this council. However, as the report was an EA joint study of the coastline between Dawlish and Exmouth, our share of that cost was 75,000. I would also like to add, if I may, that I, along with the rest of the Cabinet, we share the concerns of Exmouth councillors regarding the reduction in beach levels at Exmouth. Our engineers were aware that the beach levels would be a major concern by the early to mid 2020s, as the beach management plan reported. We already have the objective of understanding a study to assess beach recharge options linked to the 2015 beach management plan, and this is currently being scoped. The recent changing weather patterns of strong easterly winds has accelerated the predicted assumptions from the 2015 report. We hope to see some return of the sand when the easterlies abate, but in the meantime, I am asking for an urgent review of how we can manage the beach level drop and what can we do with the recharge to the beach. However, there has not been any funding allocated for this since the report in 2015, and the sums now required to return the beach to a better amenity space and recharge the beach is now going to be a major cost to this council. Unlike other beach management plans we have at Seaton and Sidmouth, where numerous dwellings are benefiting from the beach works with improved flood protection, there are very few properties along the Exmouth seafront, and so any works to the amenity beach are unlikely to benefit from government funding, which means EDT and its partners will have to fund any works which are likely to be in the order of hundreds of thousands of pounds, if not millions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Can we then move to...
Chair, can I come back as soon as I was mentioned, please?
I don't think at this point that's necessarily appropriate. Councillor Young was just making a short statement related to the
Well, no, he was
correction
incorrect.
of the minutes.
He was incorrect. Chair, he was incorrect.
Councillor Young was correcting a statement about the cost to the council. Was he incorrect?
What I brought up at the committee, Chair, was information that I obtained from officers of East Devon District Council. So please, let's get that straight, shall we?
Thank you, Councillor Cahill. So we need to vote to accept those minutes with the clarification as provided by Councillor Young on the finances. Can you please vote?
Chair, I have 43 voting in favour. 42.
Thank you.
Pardon.
Thank you, Sue.
Sorry.
Councillor McCollum, can you please present the minutes of the Housing Review Board held virtually on the 21st of January?
Okay, I think you've got the joint scrutiny. You've got the next day's joint scrutiny on the 14th, and you've also got scrutiny of the 4th, I think, as well.
I didn't have those on my list. We've done scrutiny for the 4th of February.
Oh, sorry, this is duplicating my list.
Then we're on to the minutes of the Housing Review Board, 21st of January.
Yeah.
As per the agenda on page 3.
Chair, on the line agenda, it says the minutes of the joint scrutiny from the 13th
of January.
Yeah.
It's just on the 14th.
13th of January and the 14th of January.
Yes, on the 13th.
Is it not?
What? When? If we need to vote on the 13th of January, then I think then the chair of the Joint Scrutiny and Overview Committee needs to present the minutes of the joint meeting on the 14th of January. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that was missing from my notes. Who was the chair of that joint meeting?
I did the chair. Sorry, Harry.
Councillor Brown.
No,
Well, I've done the second of those meetings.
Yes, I was the chair of the first meeting, Chair. So on that basis, I'd like to present the minutes of the Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee budget meeting held on the 30th of January 2021, minute numbers 108 to 114. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. Can we please vote on that set of minutes, please?
Okay, Chair, we have 47 votes in favour.
Thank you. Have we covered the joint scrutiny
shall I
and
do
overview? Are we still another one to do?
We've got the 14th of January to do. So I'll
Yeah.
present the minutes of the Joint Scrutiny and Overdue Committee budget meeting held on the 14th of January 2021, minutes number 115 to 121.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Can we please vote on those minutes?
Okay, Chair, I have 43 votes in favour.
Thank you. I think that does bring us on to the minutes of the Housing Review Board held virtually on the 21st of January. Councillor McCollum.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to present to full council the minutes of the Housing Review Board held on the 21st of January 2021, minutes number 85 to 101. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we vote to approve those minutes, please?
Okay, Chair, I have 46 votes in favour.
Thank you. We now have minutes of the Strategic Planning Committee held virtually on the 15th of December. Councillor Ledger.
Very much, Chair. So I'll present the minutes of the Strategic Planning Committee of the 15th of December, minutes numbers 89 to 102. Thank you very much.
Can we vote on those minutes, please?
Okay, Chair, I have 46 votes in favour.
Thank you. Can I now invite Councillor Wragg to present the minutes of planning committees held virtually on the 6th of January, minutes of the planning committee held virtually on the 7th of January, and the minutes of the planning committee held virtually on the 10th of February, please?
Yes, on all those dates, Chair, present those minutes and so move. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we now vote to approve those 3 sets of minutes, please?
Okay, Chair, I've got 47 votes in favour.
Thank you. Minutes of Audit and Governance Committee held virtually on the 26th of November 2020. And the minutes of the Audit and Governance Committee held virtually on the 28th of January. Can I ask Councillor Hawkins to present those, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to present the minutes of the Audit and Governance Committee held on the 26th of November 2020, minutes 51 to 61, and the minutes of the Audit and Governance Committee held on the 28th of January 2021, minutes numbers 62 to 74.
Thank you. Can we please vote on those sets of minutes?
Okay, I've got 43 votes in favour, Chair.
Thank you. I have a deviation on my list. Do we actually have the minutes of Audit and Governance from the 26th of November and the 28th of January to be presented now? Or minutes of licensing and enforcement, which I don't think is correct.
It should be the minutes of licensing enforcement next, Chair, on the 18th of November.
Okay, so Councillor Whibley, minutes of licensing and enforcement committee held virtually on the 18th of November. Can you present those, please?
You've caught me on the hop too. I will present those minutes as.
Sorry, Chair, can we just check? Because I don't think they're actually on the agenda.
No, they're
No,
not
that's
on the
what's just
public
confused
agenda.
me.
Yeah, they're not on the agenda.
So in that case,
So-
we won't be approving the minutes of licensing and enforcement.
I unpresent those minutes.
Thank you. What we actually have on the agenda are the minutes of Audit and Governance from the 26th of November and the 28th of January.
And Councillor Hawkins wrapped those up together and presented them together. That's been done. So it's on to stand.
Right, finally, minutes of the Standards Committee held on the 19th of January. As Chair of the Standards Committee, I put those for approval to Council, minutes numbers 27 to 34. Can we vote on the minutes of the Standards Committee, please?
Okay. Chair, I have 48 votes in favour.
Thank you. Right, we're moving on now to agenda item 11, which is changes to governance arrangements. This is a late report from the monitoring officer brought to council with my agreement in order to address the changes to the political balance of committee allocations arising recently. Can I invite Henry to address his report?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing it to come through late. I mean, it's not a particularly difficult report, I think, so I'm not going to go through it in any detail. I'm happy to take any questions members may have, but it is effectively just putting the council into the correct position following changes and a couple of tidying up requirements. So, as I say, happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I sort of can ask for you to endorse the recommendations that are set out. Thank you.
Thank you. I see one hand is raised to comment on that. Councillor Ingham.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I want to address the leader. How well does the leader feel that the new portfolio holder for tourism can work with our officers when at a scrutiny meeting last year, he implied our officers working on the Queen's Drive project could not be trusted due to having meetings with developers behind closed doors. Additionally, Is there a conflict of interest for the portfolio holder regarding the future of the Queen's Drive project, given that he is part of the copyrighted Exmouth Egg Group that wants to develop the site? Thank you.
Councillor Arnott.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to Councillor Ingham for that question. I'm absolutely delighted that Councillor Hookway has stepped up to this new and vital role, which I don't think was understood or appreciated 4 or 5 weeks ago. Now, this wasn't about moving the political deck chairs. It is because in order to help lead our economic recovery, we need attention on culture, we need attention on leisure, and we need attention on sport. Now, I think Councillor Thomas's principal worry, and I look forward to his advice on this, should be about the £1 million we are down because of the government's failure to support our efforts with LED. Now, that really is a financial hole. That's really one to worry about. But coming back specifically to Councillor Ingham's point, I'm absolutely certain that if there is any conflict of interest for Councillor Hookway in his work on the Queen's Drive Delivery Committee, he will resolve that in liaison with the appropriate officers, and he has my complete trust, and he is the absolutely perfect person for this job. To address even more directly Councillor Ingham's point, Councillor Ingham will know, because it was he who distributed the documents about Moray Capital, who were the utterly inappropriate entity chosen by the former council to lead on aspects of Queen's Drive. It was Councillor Ingham who distributed those papers that were vouchsafed to him to various other councillors. And he will know that there were many legitimate concerns about the way in which Queen's Drive was rolled out. I'm absolutely delighted to confirm that since this administration has come in, we have recalibrated that committee completely. We are taking a huge amount of input from the public, open input from the public in Exmouth. And if Councillor Ingham chooses to watch the meetings, which are available on YouTube, or to read the minutes, I will think he will see a pattern over the last 6 to 8 months of constructive engagement in which Councillor Hookway has played an excellent part. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really pleased about that answer, and I look forward to seeing it progress in the interests of openness and integrity and honesty.
Councillor Ingham, you do not have a right to reply to that. You asked a question and Councillor Arnott answered it. Councillor Thomas, you were named, though, again. You're muted, Councillor Thomas.
Sorry, I was just looking for the button, Chair. I'll have to get used to this. I'm not used to speaking so often at full council. I'd really like to thank the leader in the first instance for recognising that I still have some level of value to add to the finances of the council. That perhaps further illustrates the wisdom of the position I took in an earlier matter, but I know we did decide that, and my view was lost. I can't make any comment in relation to Councillor Hookway at all, and I don't make a habit of making comments on things I know nothing about. So I will leave that one. But I'd just like to, on a more light-hearted note, thank Henry for his assistance. So I'm sure he'd wish to thank the independents for their assistance in unusually for what would be seen as a political group actually being content to accept lower than our entitlement of seats in this to help this paper go through rather than fighting tooth and nail for every little bit. So again, I'd like to thank my independent colleagues for taking that approach and supporting me in being able to agree that with Henry. So thank you very much all round, and thank you again, Leader, for your faith and confidence.
Thank you. I would actually like to move to the vote on this. I appreciate, this isn't really a discussion about a person in a particular role. This is just to approve the changes that have been agreed with the group leaders. So I think we really need to vote on this. Can we please vote on accepting or not the proposed changes as presented to us by Henry, please?
Okay, Chair, I have 43 voting in favour and 2 against.
Thank you, Sue. That brings us, I think, to the final item on the agenda this evening. Agenda item 12, motion on future high streets funding. I don't intend to read the motion in full since it's quite long, and you do have it on page 4 of your agenda papers. I will invite the proposer, Councillor Whibley, to speak to the motion, and I'll remind all members to keep any contributions brief and to the point, and to please not to repeat things that other members may already have said. I appreciate that it's getting late in the evening and we'll all be wanting our dinner soon. So, Councillor Whibley, please, you proposing this motion?
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening, colleagues. Before continuing, I wish to state that I'm just acting in the capacity as an independent Exmouth councillor, acting in the best interests of the town. Brief narrative now. On the 9th of December 2019, 3 days before the last general election, it was announced that Exmouth was to be given a free pass into the second round of future high street funds, which could have seen Exmouth receive a cut of up to £20 million towards regenerating its high street. The details were sketchy, but an unnamed Conservative spokesman in the press did confirm at the time that this was a unilateral decision by the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, Robert Jenrick, after negotiations with Simon Jupp, the Tory candidate for East Devon at the general election some 3 days later. His rivals in the race for Westminster were not, due to the timing of this announcement, given right to reply. Simon Jupp duly won the election, confounding pundits and bookmakers who were sure it would be much closer. According to details released at the time, Exmouth would receive £150,000 to fund a substantial and detailed bid to be put together for the main fund. So why then was Exmouth suddenly in the running for funds it hadn't applied for? Because East Devon District Council had chosen Axminster to be its representative in the funding rounds, but in July 2019 received notice that it had been unsuccessful, and you'll have that laid out in a timeline I emailed to you earlier on today. So the money to put a bid together never arrived. No contact was made from Robert Jenrick or his representatives to East Devon District Council. Informal efforts yielded no response. In January of 2020, a letter from the then leader of East Devon District Council, Councillor Ingham, now ironically a Conservative councillor, asked where the money was. There was no reply. Local councillors continued to ask questions, but the silence continued. So if we fast forward to December of last year, Boxing Day, when the announcement of those who would receive funds came about, and there was no Exmouth, which wasn't a surprise because we hadn't been able, as promised, to put together a bid. There was justifiable outrage from local politicians, including Claire Wright, the beaten independent candidate in that election. So it's clear to me that the promise of money made in 2019 was for one purpose only: to win the East Devon parliamentary seat, when it was looking as though Mr. Jupp may not be as secure as people hoped. It's almost unheard of for a Secretary of State to intervene in this way, effectively promising to sidestep procedure and rightful process to the benefit of one place in particular. Now, this offer of money was a complete fabrication, an imaginary carrot on a non-existent stick for the voters of East Devon. And then in January of this year, we see from Simon Jupp on Devon Live, I'm looking forward to working with East Devon District Council on putting forward an application for Exmouth as part of the usual process for pots of money up for grabs from government. Pots of money, not the Future High Streets Fund. On Monday of this week, in a display of some gall, we hear that there is a possibility that we might be able to apply for funds through the Levelling Up Fund and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which will build on the work of the Future High Streets Fund. Again, not what was promised. This is an acknowledgement, I think, that the deal struck in 2019 was a sham. And any deal with the Secretary of State was, if you cast it in the very, very best light possible, a flight of fancy. At worst, it was a blatant attempt to mislead the public to gain last-minute votes. So Exmouth, and indeed members throughout East Devon, need a clear, honest explanation what happened here and why. And that is why writing to the two MPs, I feel, may get us that. I think the nuance here lies in the difference between a pledge and a promise. Election pledges are oft unfulfilled, but the use of the phrase Exmouth will is indicative of more. Not should, could, may, or might, but will. As I've said, both the timing of the announcement and the lack of subsequent action are just plain wrong, and I just feel this narrative needs to be told and people brought to account. So those on the opposite side of the chamber, particularly Exmouth members, who logically should, I imagine, feel conflicted, please consider why you're here. Are you here to protect the interests of your party at a central level, or, as I am frequently told by highly upstanding members, because the town and its people always come first? If then the town does come first, please vote to accept this motion. Just a last point on the reputational damage suffered by East Devon District Council as a result of this, because we are constantly pilloried as an authority by our local parliamentary representatives for not being willing to work collaboratively with them for the betterment of our region. But this is another twisting of the facts, because we have tried as an authority to engage with this process, but have received cold, hard silence from the government representatives wriggling out of their previous pronouncements. We're here and we want to work with you. And just finally, I think today's announcement of an expansion of the Levelling Up Fund offers hope, but it does not change the facts as presented tonight. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Whibley. I now invite the seconder, Councillor Miller, to speak to the motion.
Thank you very much, Chair. We talk about election pledges or election promises. This was a formal announcement that Simon Jupp had personally secured £150,000 through Robert Jenrick for Exmouth to bid for up to 20 million to be part of, and I quote, the next group of towns to receive this money. We are concerned that this was fake news. Mr. Jupp said that Exmouth will receive the money. Our view has been strengthened this Monday when Robert Jenrick gave a statement during a questions session in the House of Commons, in which he said any potential application East Devon District Council would make for future undisclosed pots of money would be considered very carefully. This is very different from the claim made by Mr. Jupp that he had already secured the money. Many councillors at the time, I recall Councillor Bailey and Councillor Bond, did smell a rat when this very interestingly timed press release hit the front page of the Exmouth Journal a few days before an election. Not for the first time, we see Conservative Party ministers circumventing due process and making up new rules in the interest of short-term political gain, or as we have so often seen, the financial gain of their friends and supporters. We've seen it with the Richard Desmond affair and the West Ferry Printworks development in East London. We've seen it with the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, breaking the law by publishing PPE contracts, some of which he gave to his personal friends. They're examples of how low the Conservative Party and the government have sunk. And I make no apology to Councillor Skinner for holding that view, because they are simple facts. And for avoidance of any doubt, criticising the actions of the political party does not amount to gerrymandering, which, if you read the English dictionary, means the manipulations of the boundaries of an electoral constituency. For anybody who lives in or visits Exmouth, for its amazing seafront and Jurassic coast, the town centre requires urgent regeneration. You may see in my background a rotting old clock meant to be a landmark, which doesn't even tell the time, an eyesore in the town centre, a symbol of long-term decline, a symbol of austerity, and a symbol of continued lack of investment in the town. In October last year, Devon County Council named Exmouth as one of the towns in the county most in need of funding. So why on Boxing Day did Exmouth not appear in the next round of future high streets funds as had been announced? We have no evidence that it was even considered. This council wasn't given the opportunity to bid. I also think it is for us as a council to stand up for due process and to say that political hijacking of due process is unfair on other towns in the district, such as Axminster, which was selected in the last round and rejected. So, Chair, there are so many questions and so few answers. The evidence we see and the briefing shared by Councillor Whibley make me strongly suspect the Future High Streets Fund announcement always was a cheap election bribe. And in my view, when you tally Mr. Jupp's blog, which is still on his website, with Mr. Jenrick's statement in the Commons on Monday, I believe it amounts to potential election fraud, and I believe it is the role of this council, which is meant to be in charge of submitting bids of this nature, to take independent legal advice with a view of reporting this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Obviously, quite a lot of members wish to speak on this subject. Councillor Jackson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to support what colleagues, Councillor Miller and Councillor Wibley have put forward, but and as not an Exmouth member, that might be a surprise given that it's Axminster that was originally selected for this. But I'll explain why. And I'd like to move a slight amendment to the proposal put forward, and I'll detail that at the end. But when the Future High Streets Fund became available, as laid out already, Axminster was selected as the most likely town to be eligible based on the criteria put forward. And that would have been in line with a wider strategy, I'm absolutely sure. But it wasn't shortlisted, although in the briefing that followed to the ward members, officers suggested that actually the Future High Street Fund had suggested it might be sensible to apply again should future rounds of funding come forward, which was, for me as an Axminster member, comforting. And I felt like there might still be some hope in this funding. From Axminster's High Street has suffered for a long time and was in desperate need of regeneration and still is. So I was very surprised to suddenly hear that Exmouth was being thrust forward into this funding stream by the potential MP at the time, Simon Jupp, with this new promise of funding for a new bid. Because from my perspective, Axminster, as far as East Devon were concerned, based on all of the facts in front of them, were the most likely to succeed. So I think I'd probably have been less unhappy about the situation had he actually delivered on that and Exmouth had received some funding, because at least then one of the towns within the district would have benefited from this fund, which it didn't in the end. But this isn't so much about Axminster or any particular town or any particular high street. This is about a fundamental principle for all towns, and also the district council's reputation, because the Future High Streets Fund, round 2 or 3 or whatever comes forward, if it comes forward, may have different criteria. It may be that Cranbrook, which hasn't got a high street and so found it difficult for a bid to be put forward for this, might be more eligible in future rounds if the criteria changed. And I'd like to be in a position to say, well, let's put a bid forward for Cranbrook if they are the most likely to succeed. It could be Sidmouth, it could be Budley, it could be Seaton. Who knows? Until we see that, we don't know. And undermining the council's position in this, it's the council that's responsible for assessing all of these towns and the potential to succeed at any one of these funding streams. But what Simon Jupp has done in this is politicised a matter that now it's going to be very, very difficult for East Devon to justify submitting a different town to future funding, because the public have been stirred up to such an extent that they would be expecting that Exmouth be the town that's put forward. And if they're not the most likely to succeed, submitting Exmouth for a bid on a fund that they are less likely to achieve instead of the town that is most likely to achieve does a disservice to both Exmouth and whichever other town that would have been. So it's not about Exmouth, it's not about Axminster, or my amendment anyway is certainly not about Exmouth and not about Axminster. It's about the district council being able to operate as the body that assesses and puts forward these bids in collaboration with its MPs, all of them, to obtain the best outcome for whichever community any potential funding is applicable to. So the amendment that I want to make is to the, I think, penultimate paragraph, which begins with, should there be confirmation that the future High Streets Fund is to continue. And that I want to amend to, should there be confirmation that the future High Streets funding is to continue, the council resolves to request a meeting with all MPs to work together cross-party to prepare a bid for whichever town or community is, according to the criteria of the funding and East Devon District Council's assessment, the most likely to succeed in any such bid. And I hope that perhaps the proposers of the recommendation would accept that amendment, and if not, that someone else might be willing to second it. Thank you very much.
To second that, Councillor Jackson, happy to second it.
Councillor Whibley, does that mean you're prepared to accept that amendment immediately into your motion?
Yes, yes, I am. Thank you, Chair.
And is the seconder happy?
Councillor Miller, are you happy?
Sorry, yes, I'm delighted. Yeah, very good amendment. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I ask Councillor Jackson to send the wording to me, please? I can't write fast
Yeah,
enough. These.
absolutely. I'll send it through now.
Thank you.
I thought you were writing very fast, Henry.
I tried. I couldn't keep up.
Thank you. So that now becomes the motion that we're looking at debating. Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. I very much recognise and understand Councillor Whibley and probably all other Exmouth members' annoyance and irritation at Mr. Jupp's blatant and inappropriate election statement, as has already been highlighted. I, like Councillor Whibley, believe it was a deliberate and cynical attempt to influence and mislead voters back in the election. I'm sad, I'm very saddened actually, at Mr. Jupp regularly using his elevated position, now he's got it, as one of our MPs, to continually denigrate this council, denigrate its activities and denigrate its actions. Yes, he's got the right to express his opinions, but he also needs to remember that he is the MP for all of East Devon's residents, and not, as he seems to like to portray himself, as just a mouthpiece for the local Conservative Party. I think he needs to learn. He really does need to stop using his position to just keep kicking this council continuously. And that's, I think, because he doesn't like the fact that his party no longer rules the roost locally. I'm equally irritated that Mr. Jupp, whilst continually denigrating most things that this council does, at the same time endlessly ignores requests for help from us. So, for example, by asking him to work with us to lobby ministers, etc. I want to address my Conservative colleagues, if I may. And I'd like to draw your attention, if you haven't guessed it yet, colleagues, that Mr. Jupp is doing himself, the electors and this council absolutely no favours in the way in which he publicly uses his position to seek to undermine and devalue decisions that members democratically make and the activities that our staff deliver on our behalf and on behalf of our residents. So I call upon all of you in the Conservative group to get Mr. Jupp to start working with his council, actually working, not just parroting it, doing it in the interests of our electors. It's got to be in the electors' best interest and not in the Conservative Party's partisan interest that Mr. Jupp should be working and promoting. That said, whilst I've every sympathy with the Exmouth members' annoyance about the way in which Exmouth was used as a cynical political football by the then Conservative candidate and now MP, Mr. Jupp, I do not agree with the intended action in the final paragraph of this motion. This should be left to others to pursue, I believe. I'm therefore proposing an amendment to the motion that would delete the final paragraph of it. Although I've removed that amendment, don't anybody be under any misapprehension that I don't believe that all the points that have been made and all the points within the rest of the motion are appropriate and necessary. And I give that my support. And I end by reminding Conservative colleagues of one of their number only tonight who talked about political gerrymandering. Well, I'm now going to use that phrase back at you, colleagues, because I'm going to use it in the way in which gerrymandering should be seen and understood. What took place was a disgrace by your candidate, and that was political gerrymandering. And it's appalling that you have stooped to this level in order to seek to gain power. Thank you, Chair.
We're going to need somebody to second that amendment, but also need to ask Councillor Whibley again whether you're prepared to accept that amendment to remove that final sentence or paragraph. Councillor Whibley?
I'll be completely honest. I think it is justified. But on reflection, it's, you know, I mean, I think it speaks about seeking legal legal advice to see whether or not there is a case for it to be taken forward. There's no reason why somebody else can't do that. So, you know, if required. So I guess on reflection, I am happy to have that paragraph removed. But please make no mistake that, you know, it is something that will be pursued, I'm sure, be it through the council or external to that.
Thank you, Councillor Whibley. Councillor Miller?
I don't really want to accept it because I think it's independent legal advice, but because we've been going on for such a long time, I will on this occasion, I will for simplicity, and I will refer it myself. But I didn't think anything was wrong with that amendment, and if there was, the CEO or the monitoring officer would have flagged it before the motion was put on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I be clear then,
yes.
Chair? So my understanding is we've got a revised penultimate paragraph which Councillor Jackson has sent through, which the proposer and seconder are happy with, and then there's the deletion of the final paragraph which the proposer and seconder are happy with. So that is still currently the substantive motion, as in there are no amendments.
Okay, thank you. Right, so we've got a lot of hands up, so please, folks, try to keep your points short and not to repeat. And obviously, I expect Exmouth members to definitely want to speak on this. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. Simon Jupp is taking every opportunity to help Exmouth secure much needed town centre regeneration funding. The political administration at EDDC have submitted a motion on High Streets funding in Exmouth. Throughout the general election campaign in 2019, Simon Jupp got out on the doorstep to speak with residents and businesses in East Devon's biggest town. Empty shop units and the need for town centre regeneration came up time and again. That is why Simon lobbied the Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick, to put Exmouth on his radar for the next round of funding, which was subsequently delayed due to the pandemic. The Democratic Alliance are now seeking to personalise and politicise through a public council motion rather than act collaboratively to put the best applications forward. Their only justifiable bit of frustration is their unforeseen delay, a result of application processes predating the general election and the ongoing emergency challenges of the pandemic. Simon Jupp is once again calling on the Democratic Alliance to work with him to grasp the opportunities again. Funding does not come without proper plans. Simon will always be transparent, collaborative, and open. He is a campaigner for the constituency he proudly represents as a strong voice in Parliament and with the Conservative government, securing support for our hospitality industries, Exeter Airport, and the Exeter Chiefs already. Simon Jupp is doing this by working extremely hard and speaking up for Exmouth in all parts of Parliament. East Devon District Council should be looking to work with him for the good of the town and not try to sabotage relationships or his efforts. I really don't understand what the problem is here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much. I think the question for me is this motion really going to help us? Is it going to help the residents of East Devon? I'm not convinced that it is, because I feel that it's confrontational rather than collaborative. And my feeling is that actually it's a political motion, and I feel that, you know, we have to be really careful and try and collaborate, whatever our political differences. So I'd like to see less confrontation and more collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. I will call 5 more speakers, as they were been the ones with the hands up for the longest, and I think we probably after those will have heard both sides of the debate to move to a vote. So Councillor Cagle's next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Just like to start by saying, as Robert Jenrick, MP, Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, stated on record in Parliament on Monday, 22nd of February 2021, and I quote, "I very much enjoyed visiting East Devon during the general election campaign, and I look forward to seeing Exmouth's application in due course. As I said then, Exmouth is exactly the sort of town that we want to benefit from the town regeneration funds that we have made available. I am pleased to tell my honourable friend that we are driving forward our plans to boost town centre regeneration in every corner of the country. The Levelling Up Fund and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund will build on the work of the Future High Streets Fund and the Towns Fund, and the prospectuses for those will be published very soon. I hope East Devon District Council will work with him to grasp this opportunity and put in good proposals that we can consider carefully," unquote. Since the last election only 14 months ago, we have had a global pandemic, and now we are in a recession. It's no surprise that government funds are updated to reflect the needs of our nation now. I say to all my fellow councillors, work with our MP when the fund opens soon, not against him. I wonder if the current council leadership understand government funding. It does not come with a blank cheque. It requires an application with plans, and the next round of funding is not open yet. If they do not understand that, it should worry us all. East Devon District Council's own letter in January 2020 to government says the council is keen to move forward in terms of developing exciting proposals. We are still in a pandemic and now in a recession. Timescales and details change, but the Secretary of State made it clear that he is looking forward to Exmouth's application. Government funds are adapted and updated regularly. Just ask council officers. Places given funding announced in December were from applications which predate the general election in 2019, before our MP was elected.
our MP talked about funding for Exmouth again in Parliament this week. He continues to campaign for Exmouth and asked about the next opportunity for an application for the town, as he did last summer in Parliament too. Before you pass a motion which could sour relations with our MP, just as he's asked to work with you, why not wait for the details of the new funds process and work with him instead? You have sent him many letters asking for support. Goodwill goes both ways. It is time to show you can work cross-party for the good of our area and help Exmouth stay a great place to live and work. So I call on my fellow councillors to vote down this motion so we can move forward cross-party working with our MP to ensure that we can achieve the aim of obtaining the funding so we can continue to build on making East Devon the outstanding place to live that it is. And I would just like to finish up with saying how I agree with Councillor Bailey that we've got to start looking forward, not backwards, and let's get working together to get things succeeding. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I need to draw this debate to a close soon because time is getting on, and I think we're going to be pretty certain on what people are saying. I will stop the debate after Councillor Hayward, so that's 4 more speakers only. Sorry to everybody else, but Councillor Hayward's had his hand up for a long time already. So Councillor Ragg next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well,
Eileen, we can't hear you. Councillor Ragg appears to have disappeared.
She's on mute.
She's got a mic on mute, Chair.
Councillor Ragg. We still can't hear Councillor Ragg. Other speakers appear to have put their hands down, so I have no more yellow hands now. Sorry, Councillor Ragg. Right, the yellow hands that have disappeared have now come back again, but I have a list of who they were. Councillor Ragg has disappeared, silent. Next on my list that's still there is Councillor Moulding.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to refer back to Councillor Miller and his concerns about the position in Exmouth, and he had a building in behind him which he said was an eyesore, and I believe that it was a shame that the Exmouth Regeneration Board wasn't allowed to continue with the work it was doing, which was not just for Queen's Drive but all the other areas of concern in Exmouth. And to do that, what the Regeneration Board was wanting to do was to create a plan. And that's what you need to get funding. If Exmouth comes up with a good plan, I would love for it to get more funding in a future fund. And that fund could be the Levelling Up Fund or another High Streets Fund. But we must get a plan together and work together with Simon Jupp, not just against him. I've heard enough criticism of our MPs. Don't bite the hands that feed you. Work with them. And I see why Councillor Loudon suggested that the final paragraph of the notice of motion should be removed, because I am pretty certain that if you went ahead with that, you would waste many, many thousands of pounds of district council funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
I'm going to reiterate some of what has been said very briefly, but what I do want to do is I want to be able to say that some of the wording that's come out from the first speakers that came out is no more than political bias, and I wish they would steer away from political. We're not in Westminster here. This is East Devon District Council. What the MP is trying to do is trying to garner some money, and Councillor Bailey, Jess Bailey, spoke extremely well when she said that this particular item that's come forward is aggressive in its nature. And because of his aggression, where do you think you're going to get when you start working with people who want to work with people and you put out the barriers and the aggression before you've even started? You get absolutely nowhere. That's where you get. And it's just political mandering. And I'm tired of it because it's really, really important, this funding for Exmouth. Exmouth is the biggest town in Devon. And I'm proud to say that I was born in Exmouth. I was part of the Regeneration Board, fighting and striving and believing and taking it forward and good things happening. And the last thing I want to hear is this political mandering from all sorts. And it's sort of this item that's come forward here today that does absolutely no good. And as far as going forward, in the way that we're going forward, if Oliver Twist got the hand out, more. We've got to focus on what we're doing. We've got to focus on what's coming forward, and we need very much to be working with the MP. And I believe Simon Jupp is doing a wonderful job. And if he can get £20 million coming to Exmouth, I'm all for it. And I don't give a monkey's brass which way it comes, as long as it comes to East Devon and as long as it comes to Exmouth, and we can regenerate Exmouth, because it really needs that power, and that input from central government funding is absolutely key for taking us forward. So please, members, I'm not going to be supporting this in any shape, way or form. Let's not put up the barriers. Let's not have aggression. Let's try and see that in the course of time, that if some funding can come forward to East Devon, we put our arms out, we work with the MPs in coming forward and collaboratively work with them, not be putting this motion up and fighting against them before we've even started. I don't know in what other arena, and certainly in the private sector, would anybody work like this. You wouldn't even get over the line. You wouldn't be entertained. So let's show some professionalism, and let's talk about how we're going to move forward in trying to get this funding, which is critical, not only for Exmouth, but for East Devon generally. Thank you.
Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief indeed. I think there has been some volcanic lava introduced into this argument, perhaps from both sides. And I've got only two comments to make. One is to Councillor Bailey, who I remember was very happily posed next to Claire Wright, Hugh Grant down, I think, in Sidmouth. The question here, which actually the amended motion does not now seek to address, is what amounts to fair play in politics. In other words, what is the difference between a promissory statement with regard to actual hard cash on the front page of a newspaper, or the difference between something, one is only a fool would believe, which is, an extra £500,000 a week for the 500 million a week for the NHS. So there are questions to be asked about that. But I agree with Councillor Loudon. I'm very glad that Councillor Whibley and Councillor Miller have conceded on this. There is absolutely no point in asking this council to look for legal advice. And I have to say, I think the Electoral Commission would be toothless in this, because if it went after every politician who made promises that didn't turn out to be true, they'd be the busiest people on the planet. What I'd like us to return to, Chair, and I do hope all members have got this open on their laptops, is the motion. Have a look at the motion. The motion isn't inflammatory. The motion asks the council to write to Mr. Jupp and Mr. Jenrick on some fact-finding. There are 4 facts that are being sought. There is nothing contentious about that. And I have to say, if this council votes against doing this, I'll do it anyway, because this council has a right to know the answers to that. And there is nothing impolite, and it will not destroy relationships with an MP. Those are standard questions. And I think if you take that, which is the substance of the motion, with Councillor Jackson's amendment, you then have got something that is courteous and I think would be received in the spirit in which it is intended by the MP and the Secretary of State. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Final speaker, finally, to Councillor Hayward, who's had his hand up for an awful long time. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank Conservative Central Office for sending down so many scripts to be read out. It's very kind of them. It saves a lot of time for members having to formulate their own political broadcasts. Secondly, I'd like to correct from a previous discussion, Councillor Moulding. As Councillor Eldon pointed out, gerrymandering is about boundaries. What we're describing here is pork barrel politics, an American term where you throw money into a specific local area to tilt an election. It goes back to 1917, and unfortunately, the Conservatives, Councillor Skinner is shouting at someone, I'm not sure, but he's got his mic turned off. This is something that goes back, and the Conservative Party is amazingly good at it. Robert Jenrick is literally the champion of doing this. We only have to remember that his own constituency of Newark received a huge sum from this. And when questioned on it, he said, oh, it was a bigger boy. A bigger boy gave me the money. I didn't vote for it. It was another minister who voted for my own constituency to get what George Graham, and let's bring this back to, football, because I know so many members here love their football, what's called a bung. It's a bung. And that's what happened in East Devon. It's a terrible thing because it's not democratic. It's completely subverts. It's public money being used to influence elections. That's election fraud. But I do recognise that amendment has been accepted by Councillor Whibley and Councillor Miller and withdrawn. But Councillor Arnold's quite right. This is a factual statement. This is asking questions. Councillor Skinner got very, very, uptight about, we must work with Mr. Jupp. Councillor Chapman said, I think all the Conservatives have said the same thing. Unfortunately, I come back to Councillor Loudon's point. That message hasn't got through to Mr. Jupp MP. Now, Mr. Parish, the other MP, he doesn't use social media as much, and he speaks up at Westminster, and I've met Mr. Parish quite a few times, and I'd be delighted if you write in on the amendment proposed by Councillor Jackson. But Mr. Jupp, who's just taken on a new advisor, by the way, so perhaps his social media output might be tempered now, he is deliberately confrontational to this council, deliberately, consistently, and I'm pleased to say, consistently wrong. His position on Cranbrook, where we were dilly-dallying or some other nonsense that he copied out of the back of the Beano, was proved wrong. We fought and we got a better deal for the people of Cranbrook, declaring an interest. My daughter lives there. I'm delighted.
Point of order, what has this got to do with the motion we're debating?
That is not a valid point of order. Can you draw your comment to a conclusion, Councillor Hayward?
Of course I can. Yes. Sorry, there's some feedback. Some feedback, electronic noise. I can't quite work out what it is. But essentially what I'm doing is just correcting points that have been made in support of this motion. So yes, we must work with our MPs. That's a necessity. That's the political life we play. But the door swings both ways. If Mr. Jupp is going to be persistently and consistently antagonistic towards this administration, and it's not the council, it's this administration because it's not blue. That's the reason. If he continues to do that, then I'm afraid this administration, still in power now, will stand fast against it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I draw this debate to a conclusion and
Chair,
suggest that we go to the vote.
I do apologise. My battery charger's not working and I'm nearly out of battery. Would I be able to speak? As an
I don't think so now, Councillor Ragg. Unfortunately, we've had an awful lot of contributions from both sides of this debate. And I think it's time to draw this to a conclusion with a vote. I therefore suggest...
Am I able to sum up at all?
Yes, absolutely. Councillor Whibley, you have the amended version of your motion. Please.
Okay, I will be quick. Right, if you book a taxi and they say, we will be there at 9 a.m, you'd feel reassured. If it's a few minutes late, fair enough. If it never arrives, despite the fact you've told that it will arrive, you'll want to know why. I believe that given we were told that Exmouth will receive funding, all we want to do is to know why. Councillor Cahill, funds were promised. Talking about funds that may appear in the future is not relevant here because funds were promised. And Councillor Moulding, the promise of money, the initial £150,000 was to develop the very plan that you talk about. I'd just like to stress what Councillor Hayward said. Of course, we'll work with Simon Jupp and any MP if they meet us halfway. We've tried to work with him, but how can we collaborate with silence? And if Conservative members say that he is willing to work with us, could you give him a call? Again, all of the statements provided in the Commons this week are full of could have, should have, might have, would. And I really don't think this is political or aggressive. I'm speaking as an independent. If Simon Jupp was doing what he said he would do, I would have no problem at all, and I would not criticise, I would praise. But the aggression towards the council was kind of the thing that led me to put this motion. And there we go. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Henry, do you want to just confirm the wording that we're voting on?
Yep, so Chair, it is as printed, but after number 4, the final 2 paragraphs are replaced with, should there be confirmation that the future High Streets funding is to continue, the council resolves to request a meeting with all local MPs to work together cross-party to prepare a bid for whichever town or community is, according to the grant criteria, and East Devon District Council's assessment, most likely to succeed in any such bid. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we please vote now using our ticks and crosses, please?
Sorry, quick question, process question, Chair, if you don't indulge me. How would it, is an abstention still recorded with a raised hand?
Yes, that will be fine, Councillor Thomas, yes.
Thank you.
Right. Chair, I think it's 25 voting in favour, 15 against and 9 abstaining.
Sorry, so I didn't hear the against number?
15. So it's carried. It's carried 25 to 15 with 9 abstentions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. That brings our meeting to an end, and I'd like to thank everyone, including members of the public watching online, for taking part. However, can I just remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live, and until then, your comments will be live to the public. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you, officers. Good night.